Chapter 358. It was not easy for Zheng Tan to find the 4 students who stole the car, and it was also not convenient to take pictures of them in broad daylight. She could only wait in the backyard of the carriage racing firm. After all, they would come back here after stealing the car. Every time they came here, they would do it together. Because every time they committed a crime, there would be accomplices around to deal with possible situations. For example, when stealing a woman's car, there would be at least one man around. If they were caught stealing a car and quarreled with each other, the 2 girls would quarrel with each other. However, the relatively weaker girls would definitely size up the situation and rarely continue to quarrel. When the man's car was stolen, the girl must have been around as well. If the car thief and the owner got into a fight, the gentle-looking girl student might be able to stop the fight. After all, most men wouldn't hit a girl. Moreover, the people here were all students, and their temperament was relatively simple. Many of them were not so bold. Most of them had the attitude of keeping the peace, which encouraged the arrogance of these people. Zheng Tan came to the back of the shop, jumped over the courtyard wall, and climbed over the 2nd-floor balcony. The gray and inconspicuous mobile phone was lying there. After turning on the phone, Zheng Tan looked around to make sure there was no one around. Then he took the phone and went downstairs to find the car stolen by the girl who posted the post. The body of the car was newly painted, but the seat was still there. Zheng Tan hurriedly took a few more photos, and then went back to the 2nd-floor balcony to wait there. He didn't even go to lunch. The group of people would take advantage of the opportunity when there were many students eating outside the school at noon. If Zheng Tan left now, it would be easy for him to miss them. When it was about 1 o'clock, the door of the backyard opened. It was the same 4 people who pushed the stolen car in. Zheng Tan hurriedly turned on the camera function of the phone and began to shoot. He breathed softly so that the phone could better record their voices. They were talking about how they stole the car at noon and how they were almost discovered. This car was a good one and could be sold for hundreds of yuan after being refurbished. After that, they changed the basket and seat of the bicycle with the new paint. It seemed that they did this on a daily basis. Zheng Tan was glad that he took a few more photos just now. These people were very cautious. Zheng Tan didn't know how long Lu Ba's mobile phone could record continuously. Generally, mobile phones didn't take too long to record a video. However, Zheng Tan recorded continuously for half an hour before the notification ended and he needed to start recording again. Zheng Tan was very satisfied. The clarity was good, and the shooting effect was good. In the yard, a few people were laughing and talking about how much money they would get from selling the stolen cars. They would never have thought that at this moment, a cat was hiding on the balcony on the 2nd floor, behind the pile of junk, secretly taking pictures of their every word and action. At around 2 o'clock, 3 of them left. The remaining 1 continued to search for new cars. Zheng Tan slipped away while the man was in the toilet. The phone was still in the same place. He couldn't take it away in broad daylight. There was nothing else to take, so he just had to come back at night to take the phone back. After leaving the car shop, Zheng Tan went straight to Jiao Wei's small restaurant. He didn't eat at noon, so he was hungry now. At this time, the peak period had expired, and there were not many students eating. When Zheng Tan arrived at the small restaurant, the last 2 students had finished eating and left. Jiao Wei's parents were cleaning up. After seeing Zheng Tan, Jiao Wei's father helped to heat up the food for Zheng Tan. Jiao Wei's mother, called Jiao Pa Black Charcoal, just came. It seems that it didn't eat. It must have been playing around at noon. I'm heating up the food for it. Zheng Tan was speechless. Auntie, can you make up a better reason? If you say that, you'll be scolded when you go back. After eating, Zheng Tan went to the racetrack to see if there were any other evidence that could be taken. He went home at around 5 o'clock to wait for dinner. At 7:30 in the evening, he put on his vest and went to the racetrack to get his phone back. He put his phone in his vest and returned to the old tiled housing area on campus. Zheng Tan lowered the volume and looked at the videos and recordings on the phone. He felt a sense of accomplishment. With these videos and an analysis of Sahara's behavior that day, he should be able to tell the truth. But soon, Zheng Tan's happy mood slowly cooled down. Then his beard trembled. He suddenly thought of a very important problem. There was no data cable on this phone. Lu Ba didn't give him a data cable. Where was the memory card? If there was a memory card, Jiao Pa seemed to have a card reader. Zheng Tan looked through the phone. After studying for a long time, he only found the place to put the calling card. He didn't see the memory card. Looking at the data interface, he knew that it wasn't an ordinary data cable. If he couldn't find the card or the data cable, how could he release the evidence he had? There was a Bluetooth function on the phone, but the Jiao family's desktop didn't have it. Zheng Tan was vexed. However, after thinking about it carefully, using the Jiao family's desktop to release these things was a little too eye-catching. After all, it was the campus's intranet. If they wanted to find out who posted these things, they could easily find out. Zheng Tan wasn't a computer expert, so he couldn't deal with those professionals. It wouldn't be good if these things caused trouble for the Jiao family. Although the Jiao Pa was doing well now, he was still a far cry from people like Academician Yuan. Now, the higher-ups were fighting silently. If the Jiao Pa was targeted, it wouldn't take much effort. During the selection or other small issues, the Jiao Pa would be very busy. It would be good if Academician Yuan was behind the scenes. Unfortunately, some trouble was inevitable. The Jiao Pa had his own plans and pace. Zheng Tan couldn't interfere with the Jiao Pa's plans. This matter was handled by Zheng Tan himself. It had nothing to do with the Jiao Pa. What should he do? Zheng Tan stared at the mobile phone that was playing the video in a low voice. He thought about it and decided to let Lu Ba handle this kind of thing. Did Lu Ba expect today's problem when she left the mobile phone to him? It was too tiring to deal with people with high IQ and flexible minds like them. Zheng Tan sighed in his heart. No matter what, since he had been busy for so long, there was no reason to give up now. Zheng Tan sent a text message to Lu Ba. Lu Ba replied very quickly. He was not in the city and was busy with an order. However, he asked Zheng Tan to send the video directly to him using a software installed on his mobile phone. Lu Ba, who was out of the province, could download the video sent by Zheng Tan and post it on Tsinghua University's campus forum according to Zheng Tan's expectations. Zheng Tan had never seen that software before. Even before he turned into a cat, he had never seen or heard of it. However, since Lu Ba said that it was okay and that it was safe, Zheng Tan had no other choice but to send it directly. While sending the video, Zheng Tan was thinking about how much it would cost based on the amount of data. However, he could continue to send messages after sending the video. He did not receive any notification that he owed money. Zheng Tan did not care much about it. If something happened, Lu Ba would take care of it. After uploading the video, Zheng Tan also edited some relevant information for Lu Ba. Lu Ba said that it would be done tonight. However, Zheng Tan could not go online tonight. He could only wait until tomorrow morning to see how things went. As for the data cable, Lu Ba could not do anything now. It only told Zheng Tan where the memory card was. This was not an all-in-one phone. It was installed with a memory card. However, it was hidden, so Zheng Tan did not find it. According to Lu Ba's instructions, Zheng Tan spent some effort to find it. His claws were not flexible, so it was not convenient for him to play with the phone. Fortunately, he found the place in the end. Lu Ba told Zheng Tan not to use it casually. If he needed help, he could ask for it directly. Zheng Tan thought about it and agreed. With his rubbish technology, he should not waste his time. After arranging everything, Zheng Tan turned off the phone and went back. He broke the battery of the new phone and brought it back. He would use Jiao Ma's all-purpose charger at home tomorrow. Fortunately, the battery could be used in this way. Otherwise, it would be useless if there was only a phone without a data cable or a charger. On the other side, after sending the message and downloading the video, Lu Ba suddenly realized that it did not seem to treat the other party as a cat. It felt like it was chatting with a familiar friend. For example, it felt like it was chatting with a gold tortoise. Lu Ba shook its head with a smile and continued to do its own thing. As long as it did not harm its own interests, it would have more friends and more helpers. From the messages Zheng Tan sent to it, Lu Ba sorted out an article. It inserted many pictures and embedded a few video links. Even if someone deleted the post, they could go to the video website to watch it. The videos posted on the video website could not be deleted easily. In addition, Lu Ba asked the gold tortoise to investigate the carriage racing company. Soon, there was relevant information, and Lu Ba put it in the article. After clicking on the post, Lu Ba thought that Tsinghua University would be lively again. Unfortunately, no one would think of a cat. Lu Ba was excited. It looked through the recent posts on Tsinghua University's forum and grinned. It seemed to be fun. It was waiting to watch the show. The next day, the students of Tsinghua University went crazy. Whether it was those who had not finished the exam, those who had finished the exam and were about to go home, or those who were already at home in front of the computer, all of them went crazy because of the post. Most of the people who were angry were the students who had lost their cars, especially those who had just lost their cars. Whether it was the 4 people who did it or not, it was all on them. As for the others, they felt that the 4 people had embarrassed Tsinghua University and made them lose face. Now, many people in the university were laughing at them. This person with the ID of HT posted a detailed description of the campus car theft gang and the horse racing company. The 4 people who had stolen the cars were also found out. The female student who had lost her car in front of the pancake shop went directly to the female student who had stolen the car and made a scene in the dormitory. It was said that the scene was very lively, and there were pictures on the forum to prove it. Many of the people who had lost their cars were boys. Boys could not be calculative with girls. Even if they were angry, they could not directly vent their anger on girls, right? Therefore, a group of people went to block the other 3 people. Perhaps for many people, it was just a car. Was there a need to make such a scene? But for students, buying a car that was worth 200 to 300 yuan took a long time to negotiate the price. Not long after they bought it, it was stolen. Others could not understand this feeling. When the resentment accumulated to a certain extent, once there was a vent, it would be difficult to control it. It had to be said that these 4 people had not restrained themselves during this period of time. According to the post, these 4 people had stolen nearly 300 cars. A good car could be stolen and sold for 200 to 300 yuan or even more. There was once when they sold a car that was more than 1,000 yuan. A substandard car, even if it was only a few dozen yuan, was still a lot of money. Especially for these students who had not entered society and did not have much income, it was even more unacceptable. You want to use my car to fill your pockets? I'll beat you up no matter what. Students should understand each other. Understand your sister. Acting pitiful? But, you know you're wrong? I'll spit again. Take the initiative to admit your mistakes and resolutely not do it again. Who are you trying to fool? On the new post, there was a photoshopped picture and a caption. Chapter 359. The exposure of the school car theft gang gave a group of students who were waiting to go home after their exams something to pass the time. In a certain male dormitory, a person sat in front of a computer, eating a piece of fried chicken delivered by takeout. There was a bottle of beer next to him. His legs were on the table, and his fingers were typing on the keyboard. His roommate behind him walked over and stared at the screen. Your words are sharp. Who are you talking about? From the pure hearts of kindergarten children to the great harmony of social development? Someone stole cars from our school. There are more than 300 cars. Why are you so agitated? It's not like they stole your car. Watch your words, young man. A gentleman does not speak ill of a friend. Have you heard of that? Brother, have your sneakers been taken by someone before? Have your clothes been taken by someone while you were drying them? Have your quilt been stolen or your water bottle taken? It's the same experience. No, it's worse than stealing your quilt. *CK. This experience is too deep. Reprimand. Reprimand. *CK off, you're too slow. Let me do it. Gentlemen cut ties? *CK. There were many similar situations. Many students were talking about it when they visited their classmates' dormitories. It was the end of the year, and there was nothing else to do except for this big incident. Maslow's theory divided the needs of life into 5 levels. From low to high, they were physiological needs, safety needs, belonging and love needs, respect needs, and self-actualization needs. College students were at the 2nd and 3rd levels of life needs, and were gradually moving towards the 4th and 5th levels. They were also a group of people who were easily affected by emotions. Many times, the first thing they thought of was not how to cover up the scandal, but how to look at the big picture. Their parents had let go, and they were semi-exposed to society. Their edges had not been smoothed out, and they boldly expressed their opinions based on their likes and dislikes to vent their emotions. Just like now, many people were thinking about how to reduce the bad influence of the school, but more people would directly express their thoughts. They would scold when they needed to and had no intention of hiding it at all. The racing car store was splashed with smelly water, thrown things, and written with paint many unsuitable words for children. Don't think that the students of famous schools were a bunch of obedient children. There were many who could cause trouble. Some people said that the people of the racing car store were from the underworld, but so what? Not everyone was afraid of them. After that, the police got involved in the investigation. The school took this matter very seriously. They had no choice but to take it seriously. 2 days later, when Xianxia went out again, he found out that the shop had been closed. He heard that the shop owner had been taken away by the police. The 4 students from Tsinghua University who stole the car were expelled from school. They were taken away along with the shop owner for investigation. Generally, the school would punish students by warning, recording demerits, probation, expulsion, and so on. Expulsion was a very serious punishment. After being expelled, the school would not recognize you as a student. All your previous grades and honors would be nullified and recorded in your files. It would be impossible for you to join the army. The political background check would be directly ignored. It was said that during the investigation, those students gave up a few more names, including other students from their school, from other schools, and from other nearby car dealerships. On the day of the investigation, another car shop near the school was closed, and the owner ran away in the middle of the night. They were able to do all this because the boss of the car dealership helped them. Sometimes there were orders from customers. They would steal whatever car they wanted. Even if these students graduated, the people of the car dealership would recruit new students to join them. In short, there were many people doing this. The racing car store had been operating near the school for many years, and many students were involved. Many people did not understand why the students were still stealing cars when the school had been promoted to such a high level, and it was a famous school. Later, according to those students, it was because the money came quickly. Most of the time, they could earn more than 10,000 yuan a month. Of course, when the money was divided, it might not be so much. But for many students, especially those who did not have good family conditions, this was a good income. But poverty was not a reason to steal. Wang Xing's family conditions were not good either. That child would come here to pick up bottles from time to time. What about these favored children? Using the words of the older generation, intelligence is not used on the right path. No matter how good the school was, there were many people with bad character. One's character was never proportional to one's ability. Actually, when many students bought cars, they knew that there was something fishy about those second-hand or refurbished cars. But it did not affect their own interests, and they could spend less money to buy a car that looked newer. Who would be willing to be a busybody? It was only because of this incident that they opened their mouths. Some things were impossible to guard against. Even if it was a stolen bicycle, no one would stop it. Tsinghua University was so big, and it was impossible to strictly check every bicycle that came in and out. Only when there were some suspicious situations, such as when the lock was not opened, would the person carrying the bicycle out be checked and registered. This incident was undoubtedly a slap in the face to the security office. The security office also told everyone that there would be more cameras after the new year, and places like the car sheds and dormitories were the focus. As for Sahara's incident, a student posted a post explaining it. He had already returned home and did not go online for a few days. He only found out when his classmate called him after the car theft incident. After he found out, he quickly found an internet cafe to post the truth. It turned out that it was one of Ruan Ying's students. They often went to play basketball with Ruan Ying, and Sahara was tied up next to the basketball court. One day, everyone was playing basketball, and there were many people around. They heard Sahara's scream but did not pay attention. When Ruan Ying followed the sound, the student's car was long gone. Perhaps it was at that time that Sahara targeted those people. Every time he saw them, he would target them. Ruan Ying did not think much of it. After all, they were all students, and they did not look like bad people. Things were clear now, and Sahara was no longer a mad dog. Not only that, but he was also praised by many people. However, whether it was criticism or praise, Sahara, who was locked up at home, did not know. The school forum gradually calmed down. After the students caused a ruckus, they rushed home for the new year, and the number of people in the school gradually decreased. Sahara had been taken out, and the rest of the silent battle was left to Professor Ruan and the others. The other small fries would only be cannon fodder. No matter which circle it was, to climb to a certain height, one had to go through countless battles. For example, Jiao Pa had a competitive relationship with some of the teachers in the institute. When dealing with legitimate competition, one had to guard against unfair competition. Although it was good to be kind to others, it was always good to be careful. Just like what Jiao Pa said to his graduate students, when you are a student, you can still focus on scientific research, but when you become a teacher, you may not have the time and mentality to do so. One day a week later, Zheng Tan returned to the courtyard after taking a walk outside. He bumped into Ruan Ying, who was carrying bags of various sizes. Compared to a week ago, when the matter was at its peak, Ruan Ying was in a much better mood. When he saw Zheng Tan, Ruan Ying waved his hand. "Black charcoal, let's go. Let's go play with Sahara at home." Zheng Tan also wanted to see how Sahara, who had been cooped up at home all this time, was like. After Ruan Ying called out, Zheng Tan followed along. Walking beside Ruan Ying, Zheng Tan saw the things in the plastic bags and recognized some of them from the smell. Ruan Ying was carrying chicken liver, peanuts, walnuts, sausages, etc. He followed Ruan Ying to Sahara's house. When he entered, he saw Sahara lying on the sofa. Normally, he would jump at the door when he heard movement, but now, he just looked up and lay down again, looking listless. "Sahara, black charcoal is here." Ruan Ying went over and rubbed Sahara's head. Unfortunately, Sahara only swung his tail and was still listless. I know. I wronged you. You've been wronged. I'll cook dog food for you," Ruan Ying said. Sahara's nose twitched, but he still didn't get up. After Ruan Ying went into the kitchen, Zheng Tan came in front of Sahara. The guy just raised his eyelids and continued lying down. Did he really suffer a blow? Most pets like cats and dogs might have been wronged in their lives. If it was a human, you could tell them, "If you've been wronged, just say it." But animals couldn't. No matter how intelligent a pet was, it couldn't express its thoughts through human language. Of course, it was a different story for creatures like the general who were naturally gifted in languages and had high intelligence. If you wronged it, it would immediately start a war of words with you. It would spout a bunch of nonsense that it had heard from somewhere, and it would even have a local accent. It was said that once, General's owner, Professor Tan's child, went to a milk tea shop to buy milk tea. The shop would give customers a cardboard card the size of a bank card. There were 30 slots on the back of the card. Each time he bought it, he would stamp it with a small stamp. When all 30 stamps were filled, he would get a free drink. When General followed Professor Tan's child, he grabbed the card and flew to the cashier. He said to the cashier, "Here, stamp it." The cashier listened a few times but didn't understand what the bird was saying. She thought that General didn't speak properly. In the end, when Professor Tan's child went over to explain, she realized that the bird was speaking in a local dialect. Did you say that it was unintentional? Or was it showing off? Or was it showing off? Or was it playing cheap? Zheng Tan was more convinced that the bird was playing cheap. From the very beginning, Zheng Tan did not like the general because he could speak human language. Zheng Tan, who used to be a real human, now possessed the inner qualities of a human. Not only could she not speak human language, she could not even meow like a cat. Among Zheng Tan's cats and dogs, only the sheriff had good language talent and could meow at the dogs. The others couldn't. Cats meowed, dogs barked. Zheng Tan didn't know how to meow at all. This was a rather depressing fact. Since she had not been driven crazy, Zheng Tan felt that her mental endurance was still quite strong. He looked at Sahara, who was lying on the ground without roaring or rebelling. At first glance, he thought that it had been wronged. If he looked closely, he would find that this fellow's eyes kept drifting to the kitchen. Its ears were also moving to pay attention to the movements in the kitchen. Zheng Tan raised his hand and touched Sahara's ear. It was hot. Suddenly thinking of something, Zheng Tan touched his ear again. It was cold. As he pondered the question of why a dog's ear was hot while a cat's ear was cold, Zheng Tan noticed that Ruaning had come out with a bowl of rice. Sahara, who had been listless just now, stood up and wagged its tail happily. Its mouth was moving. Not feeling wronged anymore? Ruaning asked. Woof. Sahara jumped up and barked. Ruaning placed the bowl in front of Sahara. Sahara didn't care about anything else and started eating. From the way its tail wagged, it was obvious that this fellow was in a good mood. A bowl of food, 2 sentences, a few pats, and a few strokes of its fur. It was immediately revived. Perhaps this was why many people like dogs. Feeling wronged. Chapter 360. Just like the past few years, they went back to Jiao Pa's hometown for Chinese New Year. Compared to last year, Zheng Tan finally gave out the highest red packet this year. Jiao Yuan still felt awkward when he received the red packet. Little Pomelo didn't say anything, but when Zheng Tan returned home, he saw little Pomelo putting the red packet with the money into her piggy bank. There was still the red packet from last year in there. Only Jiao Yuan, little Pomelo, and Jiao Pa knew about Zheng Tan's red packet. Jiao Ma didn't know about it, or she would scold her for a long time. After the Chinese New Year, everyone got busy. Some went to work, while others went to school. Zheng Tan was also busy because someone came to him. Yang Yi was the middleman. The one who really came to Zheng Tan was Li Wei. Li Wei wanted to take a set of photos with animals. It seemed like it was to promote animal protection. Before coming to Zheng Tan, Li Wei had also taken photos with other animals. Although there were several animals, there was only one choice in the end. She chose a photo that was likely to be on the cover of a fashion magazine. This made Xiaogu very excited. Although it had nothing to do with him, Zheng Tan had signed a contract with his studio. He also had some responsibility, so he paid a lot of attention to this matter. There was a special photography team following Li Wei. They would follow Li Wei to different places to take photos because it was inconvenient for animals like Zheng Tan to go out. Zheng Tan was sent by Xiaogu to Li Wei's studio in Chuhua City. There were several foreigners in the photography team, and they had to go through a few days of training before taking photos. Zheng Tan didn't know if the animals that he had taken photos with Li Wei had also gone through this training. He only knew that Li Wei's company paid a lot of money this time, and there was also free training. Zheng Tan didn't care. After all, to him, it was just a little boring. When he received the task, Zheng Tan was wondering if he had to walk on the catwalk. However, when he arrived, he realized that he was just following the instructions of those people and making a few poses with Li Wei. It had to be said that a supermodel was indeed a supermodel. Just by standing there, she had an imposing aura. In order not to be outdone by Li Wei, Zheng Tan restrained her indifference. Since she had accepted this assignment, she had to take it seriously. After all, this was related to the prize money. After the photo shoot, Li Wei gave Zheng Tan a red envelope. The money in the red envelope was enough to make up for the red envelopes that Zheng Tan had given out during the new year. This made Zheng Tan very happy. Li Wei and her company's staff didn't stay in Chuhua City for long. They were in a hurry as Li Wei had a show in the near future. Xiaogu said that if Zheng Tan and Li Wei's photos were selected, Zheng Tan would be rich. There would be other unimaginable opportunities. Zheng Tan didn't really care. As for the opportunities that Xiaogu mentioned, if it was to shoot a movie again, Zheng Tan didn't want to go again. This kind of experience was enough. He didn't want to specialize in this field. Unlike Cheetah, Li Wei's appearance didn't make much difference to Zheng Tan's life. Zheng Tan was still Zheng Tan, a cat in the courtyard that looked like an ordinary house cat. In the warm spring season, the campus was always more lively, whether it was people or animals. Zheng Tan went out for a walk and came back. He walked downstairs to Depang's balcony and took out his access card and key. He was about to enter the building when he heard a voice from the 4th floor. "There's a monk picking water to drink, he picking water to drink." A bald head came out from the balcony on the 3rd floor and shouted at the 4th floor, "If you sing this song again, I'll go up and pluck your feathers." The B***T's bird on the 4th floor looked out from the cage and said, "Bald donkey." Zheng Tan and Air Mao were speechless. Air Mao wanted to curse, But considering that his daughter was at home, he swallowed the F***ck that jumped out and said to the fourth floor, "Just you wait. F***ck, why hasn't my hair grown out yet?" Mao thought angrily. Mao brought his wife and child to live in the courtyard when the weather turned warm in March. It was still the 3-floor apartment that he rented before. The original owner of the apartment had already taken away many things and cleared out a room. The study was changed into a baby's room. The nanny hired for the second bedroom, black rice, was also brought over. Because it had lived here before, it was familiar with the smell. Black rice adapted quickly and didn't cry out anxiously because of the change of place. With the nanny helping to clean up, the house wasn't as messy as before. After all, Mao was a married man with a child. Compared to his unruly self in the past, the current Mao was much more mature. Of course, if it wasn't for the bald head, some people would still believe that Mao had matured. But with the bald head, the smell changed. Speaking of Mao's bald head, it was his daughter's birthday this year. Mao was so happy that when he blew out the candles for his daughter, he got too close and the candles burned a tuft of hair in front of his head. Fortunately, it wasn't burned and nothing happened. Mao simply shaved his head bald. The 1-year-old Yuan would slap her father's bald head twice and slap it loudly. Mao didn't get angry and just let her slap it. Did his daughter think that his long hair was too prickly? Shave it again. Just like how the third master Fong doted on his daughter, he let them pull his hair and slap his face. As long as his daughter was happy, nothing was a problem. His wife and daughter didn't mind Mao's bald head, but this bald head often gave people a bad first impression. For example, a few days ago, Mao brought his daughter to see a flower show. When they came out, they were stopped by the guards there. Even the police who happened to be patrolling the area came over to ask about the situation. They asked Mao to show his identification and looked at him suspiciously. With a shaved head and sunglasses, he didn't look like a decent man. He was also carrying a clean and beautiful girl in his arms. No matter how you looked at it, it was suspicious. In addition, there were a few cases of child trafficking before the new year, so Mao was stopped directly. This incident was often laughed at by Qin Tao and the others. They said that Mao wasn't suitable for shaving his head. Therefore, Mao decided that unless his hair fell out naturally, he shouldn't learn to shave his head. Because his wife and her friend went abroad to attend a cat show, Mao directly brought his daughter to live in the courtyard of Tsinghua University. Compared to the environment and atmosphere in his home, he preferred this place. There were more children here, and the people around were good. Mao didn't expect his daughter to be knowledgeable and versatile in the future. As long as she was healthy, it would be fine. This place was just a supporting role. Mao's parents were quite supportive of this. Nowadays, the relationships between neighbors in many communities were very indifferent, and people didn't know each other well. In addition, Mao's parents didn't believe in Mao's character. If they could grow up in a good environment, at least their granddaughter wouldn't be as ugly as her father, right? But Mao didn't expect that the bird on the 4th floor would mock him as soon as he moved in. Why did it have to sing "monk" of all things? Wasn't it obvious that it was being sarcastic? Now, even Bald Donkey came out. This was too much. Except for the problem with this B***tch bird, Mao felt that life here was quite harmonious. With a nanny, he didn't have to worry about food and drink. He just needed to take care of his daughter every day. Although Mao didn't seem to be working every day, his wallet was always full of money. Once in a while, he checked the money in his bank card. Oh, there were hundreds of thousands more. Even Mao's parents didn't know how much investment Mao had made. In the past, the old couple urged Mao to do something serious to save money to marry a wife. Now, Mao's wife was married and had a child. Their wallet was full, so the old couple didn't care about Mao anymore. Instead of getting a headache every time they talked about Mao, it was better to talk about their granddaughter. Every afternoon, Mao would bring his daughter downstairs to exchange experiences with other people in the courtyard who brought their children out for walks. The old people in the courtyard were very enthusiastic about these children. Mao even put Yuan on the back of Little Blossom a few times. Many children in the courtyard liked Little Blossom very much. Compared to the bull-headed terrier Zhuang, who was small in size, Deformed and fierce in many people's eyes, Little Blossom was a gentle big fellow and was very popular among the children. Of course, not many parents would let their children interact with bull-headed terriers. Everyone knew that this kind of dog wasn't easy to get along with. Moreover, bull-headed terriers did bite people more than once. This morning, Jing Tan planned to go out for a walk. When he went downstairs, he saw Air Mao moving a four-wheeled children's princess car downstairs. After moving it, Air Mao went upstairs to pick up his daughter. Was he going to walk the child again? Jing Tan had tried to lift the car before. It was about 30 kilograms. Because it didn't look conspicuous, he thought it would be the same as the plastic cars the children in the courtyard used. He didn't expect that it would be heavier. Air Mao didn't find it troublesome to move it up and down several times a day. If one looked closely, they would find that there was something special in the baby car. Many protective measures were well done. It was definitely sturdier and safer than it looked. After Air Mao carried Air Yuan downstairs, he let Air Yuan open the door and climb into the car. Air Yuan was a little over a year old, not even a year and a half. She could walk, but she couldn't run. It was a little strenuous for her to get into the car. However, probably because she had done this before, she was familiar with the series of movements. Air Mao helped her when she couldn't climb in. After Air Yuan got into the car and sat down, Air Mao asked her to fasten her seatbelt. Jing Tan looked. There was indeed a seatbelt. The equipment was quite complete. Air Mao was wearing a set of sportswear today. After everything was ready, he took out a small remote control and started walking. At the same time, the princess car that Air Yuan was sitting in started moving. Using a car to walk children seemed to be more common now. It wasn't as rare as when little kitten Zhui used to be. This method was also liked by many young parents. When Air Mao ran faster than the car, he would slow down and change from running to walking. When the car came over, he would start jogging again. No matter what, Air Mao wouldn't let the children's car get away from him. Air Yuan seemed very excited. She wasn't afraid at all and kept smiling. Sometimes, she would even pat the steering wheel that didn't really work. Jing Tan looked at the two of them. Taking a child for a walk so early in the morning, they were really in the mood. Chapter 361. In April, all the smiling flowers in the school had bloomed. One could smell their fragrance on the streets. Air Mao steered his daughter's car and drove on a path with few people. On the main road of the school, cars and pedestrians came and went in a hurry. It was not safe and there was also car exhaust. The path was different. It was safe and quiet. There were many flowers and trees and the air was better. Air Mao taught his daughter how to recognize things as they walked. Trees, birds, flowers, clouds. Air Mao taught a word and Air Mao would say it. If it was not right the first time, he would teach it a second time and a third time until it was right. Jing Tan used to think that Air Mao was unreliable. He did not expect him to be so patient with his daughter. When he was raising black rice, he seemed to be quite patient too. He taught her as they walked and even took a few photos with his camera. Air Mao had taken many photos of Black Rice's daily life when he was raising Black Rice. Now, his pleasure was to take photos of Air Mao and Black Rice. To Air Mao, repeating the same thing every day was a pleasure. As they walked, Air Mao paused. He stopped Air Mao's car and looked ahead with a frown. Jing Tan's ears twitched. He also heard something unusual in front of him. Ouch! A person rolled down the slope at the fork in front. His face was bruised and his body was in a mess. It was obvious that he had just been beaten up. Jing Tan could smell alcohol and some other unpleasant smells from the wind blowing over. After that person, another 3 people jumped down from the slope and kicked the person who was rolling on the ground a few more times. They were also cursing him. Before the people in front started to punch and kick, Air Mao put his hand into the children's car to cover Air Mao's eyes. He tried to talk to Air Mao to distract him. At the same time, he used his other hand to control the children's car and was about to leave. He did not care about this kind of thing. Unexpectedly, the person in front saw Air Mao and walked over. He looked angry. His long sleeves were rolled up, revealing the tattoo on his arm. Air Mao frowned even harder. He turned the children's car so that Air Mao could not see the person who was walking over. "Hey you!" The person pointed at Air Mao. To be exact, he pointed at the digital camera hanging around Air Mao's neck. You took a picture, didn't you? What the man meant was that Mao had taken a picture of what they had done and wanted to check it. However, from what Jing Tan saw, he didn't just want to check if there were any photos taken of them. From the look in his eyes, it was obvious that he wanted to take the camera for himself. After all, this was an SLR camera, and it was a famous brand. It was worth a lot of money. Jing Tan looked around. Although last year's car theft incident had caused the school to install surveillance cameras in some of the car sheds and dormitories, there were no cameras installed in remote and quiet places like the small paths. The students probably didn't think much of it. After all, there were many people doing things that were not suitable for children in these remote places. There were no cameras. Other than when the security guards were patrolling, no one would pay attention to this side. If they accidentally bumped into a young couple, they would be scolded by the students for being nosy and not doing their job properly. At this time, there were not many people here, and there was no one else on this road. If it was just Mao alone, Jing Tan was not worried. Mao could definitely deal with them easily, but now Mao had his daughter with him. Mao saw the person approaching, and the other two people who were kicking people over there also looked over. Mao looked around and smiled. He seemed to be trying to curry favor with the person. He looked very nervous as he said to the person, "Big brother, can we find a place to talk? This is not a good place." Mao pointed at the road. There were cars passing by at the intersection they had just passed. The person probably thought about it and didn't want to make things known, so he nodded. In their view, this was just a young teacher in the school. Generally speaking, students and young teachers were more timid and easy to bully. After Mao finished speaking, he took out his phone to check the time and put it back in his pocket. This made the person's eyes brighten. The phone was also a good phone. Maybe he even had money on him. It seemed that he had a lot of money. Because Mao was misunderstood because he shaved his head, he always wore a hat when he came out in school. Today, he didn't wear sunglasses. Since he was young, it was understandable that he was mistaken for a teacher in the school. The man pointed to a spot on the slope. There were also some stone tables and benches. Usually, there would be some students sitting there for their morning reading. But today, probably because of these few people, there was not a single student there. Black Charcoal, help me look after Yuan. Mao pushed the children's stroller to the side near the lawn. This way, it would not be easy for the stroller to slip. Then he walked up the slope with the leader. Yuan was still looking left and right for Mao. Jing Tan poked a little doll tied to the stroller to attract Mao's attention, so that the little guy wouldn't cry. At the same time, Jing Tan also pricked up his ears and listened carefully to the movements on the slope. If Mao was alone, the three people over there could be easily dealt with. The three guys looked fierce, but in reality, they were far inferior to those who really fought. They were only strong on the surface. It was okay to bluff those naive students, but to pretend in front of an expert, it could only be said that they had a death wish. The truth was just as Jing Tan thought. Mao knew very well how strong the three of them were. He was confident that he could deal with them. In addition, he was worried that Yuan would cause trouble if he left for too long, so he quickly went up the slope. He wasn't afraid of being found out. He just didn't want Yuan to see such a violent scene. Looking at the three guys who were curled up like shrimps on the ground, Mao picked up a business card on the ground. It had fallen from the leader, and there were the words, XX Guarantee Investment Company, on it. "I thought it was a loan shark," Mao said disdainfully. "No, are just helping debt collectors," the man said with some difficulty. He wanted to defend himself, but Mao quickly interrupted him. "It's none of my business if you're a loan shark or a debt collector." Mao raised his hand and patted the man's face. "You don't even know what to do. You're blind. When I came out, you were still in some corner. You're not even older than me." The leader cursed in his heart, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. Otherwise, he would be greeted with more than just 2 punches. He thought that this person was a young teacher who was easy to deal with. Now that he took off his hat and revealed his short hair, which looked like he had just been released from prison, coupled with his bandit aura, the leader was about to vomit blood in his heart. F***CK, he shouldn't have come out today. Why did he come here so early in the morning to collect debts? Mao didn't want to bother with these 3 small fries anymore. He quickly put on his hat and punched again. If it was before he got married, he wouldn't have punched so lightly. At least there would be blood. Now, he didn't want his hands to be stained with blood. He still had to push his daughter's stroller. He flicked the leaves and invisible dust off his body and walked quickly to the children's stroller. As for the person lying in the middle of the path, Mao didn't even look at him. There were too many temptations in this society. Many people found it hard to resist and gradually became addicted to it, especially those students who had weak resistance to temptation but wanted to enter the world of sensual pleasures. It was acceptable for people who borrowed money because of their family's financial situation. However, Mao wouldn't even look at people who loitered around sensual places and borrowed money because of some bad habits. In order to avoid the sensitive words, usury, many private usury companies would put up signboards such as investment company or guarantee company. However, private usury companies had developed to this point, and it was difficult to find loopholes in them. Whether it was the IOU or the mortgage procedures, they were very complete. Moreover, these companies avoided all risks when dealing with loan sharks. It was difficult to win a lawsuit. Private loan sharks were not under the supervision of the Banking Regulatory Bureau. Loan companies under the supervision of the Provincial Finance Office needed to obtain a business license, and the examination and approval were very strict. Private loan sharks were obviously illegal, but it was difficult to forcibly stop them. As for these people who helped to collect debts, guarantee companies worked with debt collection companies the most. If they helped to collect debts, if something happened, the loan shark company would be able to get rid of the trouble easily. It was a win-win situation. These 3 people were just small fries in the debt collection company. They couldn't cause any waves and didn't dare to take revenge. Mao could see this, so he didn't need to spend too much effort. With Yuan Air's hearing, it was difficult to hear what they were saying. However, Zheng Tan heard the conversation between Mao and that person clearly. However, he didn't think too much about it. After Mao came over, he left. In the next few days, Zheng Tan didn't see the 3 people when he walked around the school, so he threw this matter to the back of his mind. At the end of May, Zheng Tan heard from little Pomelo that little Pomelo was on leave recently. He was a little worried and planned to go there. If he couldn't find her at school, he would go to the blind old man to take a look. Unexpectedly, near little Pomelo's school, Zheng Tan saw the 3 people who helped to collect debts that Mao had taught a lesson to. In the middle of the 3 people, there was a bearded man in ragged clothes. Zheng Tan had never seen him before, so he didn't have a good impression of him. The 4 of them were nestled next to a shop near the school. They looked impatient as they looked at the school gate. The ragged man was trembling with fear. He was very afraid of the 3 people. The 4 of them seemed to be waiting for someone. Zheng Tan carefully approached them and eavesdropped on their conversation. "Who is it? Did you see her? Are you King lying to us?" The leader said in a bad tone. "No, definitely not. Her sister said she saw her going to school here." The man in ragged clothes cowered. "Then why don't I see her? Go in and ask her to come out." "I don't know which class she's in. I only know that she's called Huang Jiao now." Zheng Tan was shocked. Huang Jiao wasn't that little Jiao? That person. After eavesdropping on their conversation, Zheng Tan found out that the bearded man was little Jiao's biological father. He was also the one who sold little Jiao. He drank too much, gambled too much, and now it seemed that he owed loan sharks. He sold his daughter and now he wanted his daughter to help him pay off his debt? Little Jiao's relationship with her family was very weak before she was sold. After she was sold, little Jiao had probably given up on her family. Little Jiao was clearly living well now, so why did this person still come looking for her? Was this the reason why little Jiao took leave these few days? "Hey, that. One of the 3 people who helped collect debts pointed at a girl standing not far away. Chapter 362. She was standing outside during school hours, not even carrying her school bag. She was only holding a file and looking over coldly. This was very different from the little Nine that Zheng Tan usually saw. Little Nine, this child, if she was good to others, she would be very considerate of others. Conversely, when she did not like anyone, even if it was her biological father, Not to mention that this biological father had sold her. If it was not for Zheng Tan helping her at that time, perhaps little Nine would have been long gone. She repaid kindness with kindness and revenge with hatred. She was decisive and ruthless. Perhaps this was the reason why blind Lord Kuan allowed little Nine to stay. With little Nine's current background, there was no need to be afraid of these people. Therefore, Zheng Tan was not worried that little Nine would be bullied by them. He was only worried that with little Nine's age, it would be hard for her to make a decision. When these people saw little Nine, they were very excited. Little Nine's father wanted to shout and scold a few habitual words, but little Nine just waved her hand, indicating for them to change places to talk. "Hey, you made me look for you." Little Nine's father wanted to make a move after going over, but when he met little Nine's eyes, he stopped abruptly. He was afraid. Without taking another look at this blood-related father, little Nine brought the four of them to a restaurant that wasn't too big. There was a "closed for business" sign hanging at the door. Little Nine ignored it and pushed the door open and went in. The boss and employees were doing their own things as usual. They were not curious about the 5 people who came in, as if they already knew. They did not look and were doing their own things. The 5 of them sat around a table. The waiter handed them a cup of water. Yes, only 1 cup of water, and it was only placed in front of little Nine. As for the other 4, they were treated as air. "Hey, what's going on here? Don't you know that the customer is God? If you don't even know this, how can you do business?" The leader shouted. As soon as he said that, the 3 waiters and the boss in the restaurant rolled up their sleeves and looked over, their eyes extremely unfriendly. "Why don't I send you to meet God?" the boss said with a faint smile. The leader choked and turned back resentfully, not wanting to argue anymore. He just wanted to collect his debt and go back. Little Nine drank some water, put down the cup and was about to say something when he saw a black cat standing outside the window. A smile flashed across his originally complicated eyes, and he quickly got up to open the door. "Black charcoal?" The leader's face twitched. Black cat again? Previously, when they were beaten up in Tsinghua University, a black cat was also present. As expected, nothing good ever came out of running into a black cat. However, why did this cat's name sound like the black cat from that day? Could it be the same one? However, this place wasn't very close to Tsinghua University. After Zheng Tan entered the room, he squatted down on a chair at the side, watching the development of the situation and helping little Nine. One of the employees in the shop pointed at the boss with his mouth. "Boss, there's a cat." Another employee whispered to the boss, "That cat is very calm. Does it know little Nine? You're quite brave, not afraid of strangers at all." The restaurant owner's mouth twitched. He had heard that this cat even dared to play with Lord Kuan's beard. What else would it not dare to do? Others might not know, but he had heard of the rumors about this cat. Because of Zheng Tan's participation in the shop, the atmosphere in the shop changed slightly. Little Nine took a deep breath and took out something from the document bag. It was a thin piece of paper that looked like it had just been printed. There were no wrinkles or stains on the paper, and it was pale white. Little Nine pushed the paper in front of her father and said, "After signing this agreement, we'll go our separate ways and have nothing to do with each other." Little Nine's father was illiterate, but he could still understand most of the words. On the paper, it was very clear that little Nine would help him pay off his debt, and then they would not owe each other anything. Seeing that he could pay off the debt, little Nine's father did not think much about it. He picked up a pen and signed his name on the paper, and even pressed his thumbprint. Little Nine lowered her eyelids so that the people around them could not see what she was thinking. She looked very calm, but Zheng Tan could tell from little Nine's clenched fists that this child was not as calm as she appeared. No matter what, they were blood relatives. When the man signed the agreement, he did not hesitate. Zheng Tan did not know what to say. Mao and the man in front of him were both fathers, but why was there such a big difference? Was it because of poverty? Or was it because of other reasons? This agreement was just a test by little Gio. When Elder Kuan decided to let little Gio stay, the various procedures had already been completed. Little Gio no longer had anything to do with this family. Even if they were to meet in court, there was enough evidence to prove that they had an overwhelming victory. From the moment the man signed the agreement, little Nine had really cut off all ties with the past. She crumpled the paper into a ball and threw it into the trash bin. Just as the man in front of her was about to shout, Little Nine took out a card and placed it in front of the debt collector. The password is 6 nines. As Little Nine spoke, he took out $300 bills from his pocket and pointed at the blood-related people sitting across from him. However, he looked at the leader and said, "Send this person back to where he came from. I don't want to see him again. If he appears here again, he, and all of you, will not be able to leave." "Are you threatening me?" The leader stood up. However, before he could stand up straight, a kitchen knife chopped at the side of his arm. It almost cut into the table. His sleeve was already cut. If it had been just a little bit more, a piece of flesh would have been cut off from his arm. Good knife skills, Zheng Tan thought. Regardless of whether it was the 3 debt collectors or Little Nine's father, their faces were all pale. The leader's face twitched a few times as he looked in the direction where the knife came from. On the other side, the restaurant owner was sitting at the cashier counter. His fingers were rhythmically tapping on the table. He had the same smile on his face as usual, as if he had just done something very normal. "Oh, sorry, my hand slipped. I was going to chop the fly." A waiter sitting at the door looked at the people on the table and laughed. On his finger, a table knife spun quickly. It was as natural as spinning a pen. His finger was unharmed. F***CK, I definitely can't come to this restaurant to eat in the future. I won't come even if I starve to death. This was the thought shared by the 3 debt collectors. If they still didn't understand the situation now, they would be retarded. Fortunately, the 3 debt collectors weren't that retarded. They knew how to judge the situation. Since they couldn't be strong here, and they had already gotten the money, it was right to leave as soon as possible. Forcing themselves to be calm, the leader put away the card and the 300 yuan. He grabbed the bearded man and hurried out. After walking a distance, the 3 debt collectors let out a long breath. After the shock, they were furious. The leader raised his hand and slapped Little Nine's father. "It's all because of you. **CK. The bearded man didn't dare to defend himself. He continued to cower. "What do we do now?" Another person asked. "What else can we do? Of course, we have to find an ATM and see if there's money in the card. If there's no money, should we go back and ask for more?" The 3 of them fell silent. The atmosphere in the restaurant suddenly became harmonious. The waiter and boss comforted Little Nine. They knew Little Nine and Little Nine often came here to eat. Sometimes, Little Nine even took an afternoon nap here. The boss put down a plate of rice in front of Little Nine. After eating, hurry back to class. Little Nine took a spoon and ate spoonful by spoonful. She didn't eat breakfast in the morning. Because of this incident, she didn't have much of an appetite. Her head was very low. As she ate, tears fell. Her face was expressionless. After all, she was still a child. The people in the restaurant didn't say anything. The boss patted her head gently and put a bowl of warm red bean paste beside her. After eating and drinking the red bean paste, Little Nine turned back into the lively Little Nine. Zheng Tan sent Little Nine to school. He was worried that Little Nine would be scolded for being late for 2 classes. Who knew that when she entered the school, Little Nine would take out a sick leave slip and a hospital certificate from her bag. Seeing Little Nine's red eyes, the person in charge at the school gate didn't say anything and let her in. Zheng Tan, after seeing Little Nine enter class, Zheng Tan went back. Whether it was Little Nine or Little Pomelo, their classes went up along with their grades. Zheng Tan couldn't go up. In the restaurant that Little Nine had stayed in, the closed for business sign had been removed. "Hey, boss, who are those 3 cowards from just now? Why are they so arrogant?" the staff asked. The boss waved his hand casually. "They aren't anything presentable. Just throw them out of the underworld another day." The 3 people who were labeled as not presentable looked at the numbers on the ATM and were immersed in the world of how much money they could get. They didn't know that they were being targeted. Just as someone once said, if you didn't have the foresight, you wouldn't last long in any industry. Zheng Tan went back to school with a heavy heart because of Little Nine. He thought about how Mao treated Yuan and how Little Nine's father treated Little Nine. The difference was huge. However, Zheng Tan thought about the time before he became a cat. that irresponsible father that he only saw a few times a year. Then he thought about the current Jiao Pa. Tiske, familial love was actually quite complicated. That wasn't right. Was it familial love or the human heart that was complicated? When he passed by the kindergarten, Zheng Tan stopped in his tracks. Zhua Kitten's last class in the morning seemed to be an outdoor activity class. Thus, Zheng Tan jumped to the fence and squatted down, waiting for their outdoor activity class to arrive. Recently, Zhua Kitten's mood wasn't good. Zhua Kitten wanted to go to primary school, but the teacher objected. 6 years old was the legal age to enroll in school. In some places, it was still 7 years old. If one was too young, there might be all kinds of inconveniences. For many children, enrolling in school early wasn't a good thing. The school was also in a difficult position. Some time ago, when Zheng Tan came here, he heard Zhua Kitten complain that their teacher wanted him to go to preschool for a year. However, that little brat had told Zheng Tan in private that even if he went to Lord Buddha to roll around, he would still go to primary school this year. Because if Zhua Kitten went to primary school according to little Zhua's promise, she should come back. When the outdoor class started, the children in Zhua Kitten's class all ran out, fighting for their favorite ladders and castles. Only Zhua Kitten looked at the fence first. Then she smiled and ran over. As she ran, she shouted, Brother Hey, let me tell you." Chapter 363. Compared with some time ago, Zhua Kitten's mood today seems to be quite good. And the words, "I'll tell you," indicate that there will be a long conversation. Although every time Zheng Tan comes over, Zhua Kitten is talking, but today this guy looks like he will say more. Sure enough, Zhua Kitten then said that he went to find Lord Zeng, and proudly described how he used his clever brain to pretend to be pitiful in front of Lord Zeng, how to roll around, how to negotiate with Lord Zeng. Zheng Tan suddenly remembered a time when she went out for a stroll on the old street. When she walked past a tofu stall, she heard a few aunties say that the child who bought the tofu used her brain to make tofu even though she was supposed to be a doctor. But now, Zheng Tan saw that Zhua Kitten's IQ was used to make a scene, and she even succeeded in doing so. After a lot of preamble and foreshadowing, Zhua Kitten stared at Zheng Tan with bright eyes, and his mouth couldn't help but open. "Brother Hey, Grandma Yi agreed that I should go to primary school this year." The Grandma Yi in Zhua Kitten's mouth is Lord Zeng. Lord Zeng's real name is Yi He. Usually, Zhua Kitten directly calls Lord Zeng Grandma Yi. In addition to Grandma Yi, there are Grandma Li, Grandpa Zhang, Grandma Lu, and a lot of other grandparents. With the help of these elders who have a lot of power, it is not a problem for Zhua Kitten to go to primary school in advance. Moreover, Zhua Kitten has been tested by the affiliated primary school. There is no problem in the first grade at all. There is no need to go through another back door. If it weren't for Zhua Kitten's young age, the teacher in charge of the test would have almost said that the child didn't need to go to the first grade. Zheng Tan knew that this little guy had a higher IQ than the other children. While the other children were still barely able to recognize numbers, he had already come into contact with pi. While the other children were scrambling to show that they could memorize the decimal places of pi, this little brat had already come into contact with three-dimensional geometry. This was because once, when Zheng Tan came over, she saw Zhua Kitten holding a small rubber ball to measure its diameter. On the penultimate page of his sketchbook, there was a formula for calculating the volume of the ball. Zheng Tan had no idea how knowledgeable the 5-year-old Zhua Kitten was. Usually, she only heard the kindergarten teachers say that Zhua Kitten was a smart child, but they rarely mentioned the word genius. It was enough to show that Zhua Kitten was still quite low-key and restrained. At most, she would deliberately tease the teachers and classmates. Brother Hey, do you think my mother will come back after I go to primary school?" Zhua Xiaomao looked at Zheng Tan expectantly. "How would I know?" Zheng Tan cursed in his heart. Perhaps only Lord Zeng and the woman who usually took care of little kitten Zhua knew about it. "By the way, I asked Mom on Mother's Day. Mom said that she would come back when I was in elementary school," Zhua Kitten said softly as she kicked the wall lightly. Mother's Day had just passed. According to Zhua Kitten, although little Zhua had not returned, he would have video calls with Zhua Kitten every once in a while. Mother's Day was also the time for video calls. Since little Zhua had said so, could he really come back this year? If that was the case, that would be great. Although Zhua Kitten usually lived a good life, she did not have her parents by her side for as long as she could remember. Compared to other children, she would always be lacking. Even if her intelligence was higher than other children, she was still a child after all. Zhua Kitten had already determined that her mother would come back this year. Therefore, other than being more talkative than usual, she was also exceptionally happy. Once she was happy, Zhua Kitten treated the other students especially well. She was very patient with the students who came to ask her questions and did not tease them anymore. Zheng Tan did not know if little Zhua could come back or not. If she could not come back this year, how depressed would Zhua Kitten be? Although she was still a child, sometimes it was difficult to deal with children when they were serious. On the other side of the ladder, there was a child who was crying with snot all over his face. The more the teacher comforted him, the harder the child cried. Zheng Tan looked over there. He felt that he should think about what to prepare for Zhua Kitten as a gift for June 1st. When the time came, it would also be a consolation gift. Since junior high school, June 1st was just a date. It no longer had that special meaning. However, for every child in primary school, it was a memorable holiday. On that day, they would have performances, singing and dancing, snacks from the school, and holidays. On that day, it would be very smooth to ask their parents for gifts. When the new year came, Zheng Tan gave Zhua Kitten a big red packet. It was not good to give another big red packet on June 1st. If there was no red packet, what should he give? For the next few days, Zheng Tan had been thinking about it. It just so happened that Xiaoguo's shop had recently held an event. Xiaoguo had customized some gifts as gifts for those VIP customers. Most of these gifts were cat-shaped and dog-shaped dolls, ranging from small phone accessories to big pillows and stuffed toys that were about the size of humans. Of course, any kind of gift would have to correspond to the VIP membership points. The few biggest stuffed toys were specially used by Xiaoguo to please a few special customers. Every time those customers came, Xiaoguo could always make a lot of money. Zheng Tan could not have any ideas about those things, so he set his eyes on the pillows. He chose purely based on the value of the toys. Since he could not pick the biggest one, he would pick the second biggest one. One day, after going to the pet center for a routine shoot, Zheng Tan did not ask for the overtime pay that Xiaoguo gave him. Instead, he took a pillow with him. The original shape of the gifts was based on the cats and dogs in the studio. Even the paparazzi dolls were included. They did not have front legs. There were only 2 protrusions on the front legs, and they used their hind legs to maintain balance. Needless to say, this cat that was rescued by the dog from the earthquake was quite popular. Many people wanted to give away the phone chain and the dolls that looked like this guy. Although Zheng Tan was also very popular in the cat community, because of the color of his fur, the dolls that were given as gifts did not have much of an advantage compared to other cats. When Charlie sent Zheng Tan back to the Jiao family, he also sent the BC pillow that Zheng Tan had chosen to the Jiao family. The front was a black cat's head, and the back was embroidered with the letters BC. Jiao Ma thought that Zheng Tan had brought it back for himself. She did not expect that Zheng Tan had not opened the package. Because June 1st was on Monday this year, and the Dragon Boat Festival was close to June 1st, the kindergarten was on holiday from the Dragon Boat Festival to June 1st, which was a full 5 days of holiday. If Zheng Tan wanted to give a gift, he could only choose the day before the holiday to bring the person to the courtyard. Otherwise, how could he give away such a big pillow? It was too inconvenient. Zheng Tan ran to the entrance of the kindergarten 10 minutes before school ended. He knew that the person in charge of taking care of Zhuo Xiaowan, who was called Little Wan by Lord Zeng, would be waiting 10 meters to the left of the school entrance, so he walked over there. Generally speaking, Little Wan would arrive 5 to 10 minutes early. After all, sometimes the kindergarten's end time was not so strict, and there was a certain amount of flexibility. But today, after Zheng Tan arrived, he waited for a few minutes and did not see Little Wan arrive. Just as he was wondering why Little Wan had not arrived yet, Zheng Tan heard someone call his cat name. Black Charcoal? Hearing this voice, Zheng Tan's first reaction was to find it familiar. His second reaction was to turn his head and look. After seeing the person's face clearly, Zheng Tan was a little absent-minded. It was not until the person called out Black Charcoal that Zheng Tan reacted. Little Zhua. It was little Zhua. Jing Tan felt that his eyes were a little sore. The person in front of him was little Zhua, but he looked different from before. In Jing Tan's memory, little Zhua's deepest impression was the image of little Zhua holding a book and sitting on a bench by the artificial lake. That young and gentle person was one of the 3 trump cards of the famous Lord Zeng, with unlimited potential. Because of Zhua Shaowan, Jing Tan often saw some of the students under Lord Zeng. Some stayed in school, some went abroad to further their studies and came back. They did not look much different from when they left. At most, they became a little more radiant. After all, they were all going to higher places. Little Zhua, who was the same age as them, looked younger than those people back then. Only 4 or 5 years had passed, but little Zhua looked like he had experienced more than 10 years. Not only that, but he also had a thin and sickly feeling. Even the clothes he used to wear now looked like they were one size bigger. Jing Tan recalled some things that Jiao Pa had said. Some projects were more harmful to people. Even if there were protective measures, they could not be completely avoided. It was as if he had overdrawn his life. No wonder Jiao Pa said that the project was very dangerous. No wonder so many people could not come back. No wonder Lord Zeng opposed her participation in the project. When Jing Tan looked at little Zhua had already walked in front of Jing Tan. Squatting and reaching out to touch Jing Tan's forehead, little Zhua smiled and said, "Are you scared? Don't worry, you'll get better after a period of rest." Little Zhua knew that he was not in good shape now. Generally speaking, after the completion of the project, he could apply to leave and recuperate there for a period of time. There would be specialized treatment staff to help treat him. Little Zhua's original plan was to recuperate there and come back when he looked better. However, the conversation with Zhua Shaowan on Mother's Day made little Zhua change his mind. Zhua Shaowan video chatted with little Zhua every year, so little Zhua could be recognized by Zhua Shaowan even if he did not do any recuperation treatment. When she saw the black cat squatting in front of the kindergarten just now, she was actually a little nervous. She was worried that the cat would not recognize her if she left for too long. But in fact, from the black cat's eyes, she knew that the cat still remembered her. It was just that it was a little frightened by her current appearance. After all, she now looked like she had aged more than 10 years. In addition to wrinkles, there were some spots. Her face was far less radiant than before. Even if her former classmates saw her current appearance, they might not be able to recognize her. When little Zhua came back yesterday, Lord Zeng also recognized little Zhua immediately. When he saw little Zhua's appearance, Lord Zeng, who usually had a straight face and did not have much expression, directly reddened his eyes. However, he did not say much. He only said, "It's good that you're back." When she was young, she was more willful. She was always unwilling to listen to others' advice. She also did a lot of wrong things and made decisions impulsively. In the past few years, she had thought things through and understood a lot. The person she was most sorry to was Zhua Shaowan. Now that she was back, she would not leave again. In the rest of her life, she would always be with Zhua Shaowan and watch him grow up. Little Zhua was still about to talk to Jing Tan when a child came out of the kindergarten over there. Zhua Shaowan ran out. Usually, she did not see this kid so impatient. "Mommy, mommy." Zhua Shaowan, who ran out, looked over. After seeing little Zhua, her anxious and worried face immediately turned into a smile. Zhua Shaowan threw herself into little Zhua's arms. Then she lowered her head and called Jing Tan, "Brother Black." She said to little Zhua, "Mommy, mommy, let's invite Brother Black to eat together." "Black Charcoal, do you want to join us?" Little Zhua looked at Jing Tan. Jing Tan turned his head. "Forget it today. Let the mother and son spend more time together." Seeing Zhua Shaowan's joy, it would not cool down for a while. Zhua Shaowan called twice, but Jing Tan did not follow. After little Zhua led Zhua Shaowan away, Jing Tan went back to the courtyard. After taking 2 steps, he stopped, turned a corner, and followed not far behind the mother and son. It was still early now. Jiao Ma had not returned home yet. Jing Tan could still stay outside for a while and listen to what little Zhua and Zhua Shaowan were talking about. However, it was Zhua Shaowan who was talking all the way. Little Zhua just smiled and listened. From time to time, he would respond to Zhua Shaowan and let her perform. When they passed by the International Academic Hall, a group of people came out of the hall. They were surrounded by a few famous young returnees. Most of them were around 30 years old. They were about the same age as little Zhuo now. Even if they were older, they were only a few years older. It was just that they looked younger than little Zhuo and were much more glorious. The crowd surrounded them. There were also some experts and scholars accompanying them. Words such as young and promising, unlimited potential, pillars of the country, kept appearing. If little Zhuo had not participated in that project back then, he might be among these people now. He might even be higher than them. A group of figures with halos brushed past little Zhuo and Zhuo Xiaowan. They did not pay much attention to the mother and son. They talked about their own ideals, ambitions, achievements, and glorious future amidst the compliments of a group of people. Little Zhuo, who had already walked past, looked back at the group of people. There was not much envy. Everyone had their own choices and their own paths. Although, in terms of contributions, she might have more achievements than those people combined, her achievements could not be exposed. At least not now. After taking a look, little Zhuo turned back and continued to lead Zhuo Xiaowan home. When little Zhuo turned back to look, he did not pay attention to Zhuo Xiaowan's movements. However, Zheng Tan, who was following behind, saw it. Zhuo Xiaowan also glanced at those people. When little Zhuo turned back, Zhuo Xiaowan also turned back. There were other parents who had picked up their children from kindergarten. A child was sitting behind his mother's scooter. He was showing off a poem he had learned today. Luo Binwang's Singing the Goose. He had memorized a few words wrongly. However, it was not easy for a child at this age to memorize a poem. Even if they could not understand the meaning of the poem, the parents were still very happy. Zhuo Xiaowan glanced at the child. Then, she shook little Zhuo's hand and said to little Zhuo, Mommy, let's memorize a poem too." "Okay, what poem does Xiaowan want to memorize?" little Zhuo asked. "Let's compare poems." "Okay, compare poems. Xiaowan first." Zhuo Xiaowan thought for a moment and raised her chin. "Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron." Little Zhuo was stunned. Then he could not help but laugh. "Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon. Sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus. Sulfur, chloroargon, potassium, calcium." Zheng Tan, who was behind them and heard everything clearly, was speechless. This was a poem? This was clearly the periodic table of the elements. Chapter 364. Because of little Zhuo's return, Zheng Tan had originally planned to stop little Zhuo, bring him to the courtyard, and then give him a present for the 6th of July. But now, it seemed that there was no need. There was no gift that could make him happier than little Zhuo's return. The so-called consolation gift was also unnecessary. He couldn't give the present today and he wasn't in a hurry to give it. He would wait for the opportunity. Unexpectedly, before Zheng Tan could choose the opportunity, little Zhuo came directly to his door. After visiting the Jiaopa, Jiaoma, little Zhuo talked to the Jiaopa and Jiaoma for a while. Of course, she didn't talk about the projects she had participated in. Those were the projects she had signed a confidentiality agreement with. She wouldn't and couldn't disclose them. Just like the excuse Lord Zeng gave her for going abroad to do research, she talked about the research she had participated in the past few years. She didn't say much. After all, it wasn't true, and little Zhuo couldn't lie too much. The Jiaopa understood and didn't ask much. In addition to visiting the Jiao family, little Zhuo also picked up Zheng Tan to her house to celebrate the Children's Day with little Zhuo. On the Children's Day, the 4 members of the Jiao family didn't have a holiday at all. Zheng Tan could stay with little Zhuo for a day. After the Dragon Boat Festival, on Monday, Saturday, Zheng Tan went out with the Jiao family. Little Pomelo went to junior high school, Jiaopa went to college, Jiaoma went to affiliated to Renmin University of China, and Jiao Yuan went back to school on Sunday. So that morning, only Jiaoma went to affiliated to Renmin University of China. Zheng Tan directly stayed in the courtyard after going downstairs, lying on a wooden chair and waiting. Next to the chair was a pillow that Father Jiao had brought down for him. It was placed in a bag and was used as a gift. Little Pomelo had tied the bag with a ribbon and tied it with a bow. According to little Zhuo, she would go out to buy groceries this morning and then come directly to pick up Zheng Tan. They were still living in the elevator room in the west courtyard. Jing Tan couldn't go there alone. The building's security was troublesome, and he had to bring a present. In the morning, De Pang followed the old lady to buy groceries. Huang was still sleeping at home. The sheriff came out for a walk. He heard that the sheriff ate 3 dumplings at once during the Dragon Boat Festival. After his owner found out, he immediately sent to the pet center. Usually, the sheriff's owner was upset when he saw that 3 dumplings were gone. Not to mention that the sheriff's hut, the hut to Renmin, was in the courtyard. In this in's whys. No wonder the sheriff's owner's is. Wonder the sheriff's owner, S's owner's is his. SSS home day cat, SSS ats. T's, S to. Was to worry. S to T tessis azes S to worry. T. Watching the sheriff climb over the wall outside the courtyard, Zheng Tan shook his head. Zheng Tan didn't wait long. Little Zhua came over at 8 o'clock. She was carrying the groceries that she had just bought from the market. It wasn't a lot. After the groceries were transferred to one of her hands, she helped Zheng Tan carry the big black pillow with a cat's head. The Jiaopa had called and told her about it. It always felt awkward to let a woman help carry things, but Zheng Tan couldn't help it. He was just a cat now. The west courtyard was very green now. It was not as bare as it was 2 years ago. The branches of the trees were spread out, and it looked much more comfortable. It was time to go to work, and there was no one around. Zheng Tan didn't take the stairs. He took the elevator with little Zhua. After entering the house, Zheng Tan found that the house didn't seem to have changed much compared to a few years ago. There were only a lot of little Zhua's things. The original decorative paintings on the wall had become little Zhua's graffiti. Xiao Wan, who had helped take care of little Zhua for the past few years, had left. Her task had been completed. She was replaced by another middle-aged nanny, who was newly hired by Lord Zheng. Unlike the nanny hired when little Zhua was pregnant, this nanny didn't have any dislike for Zheng Tan. After little Zhua came in, the nanny quickly took the groceries and went to the kitchen. Little Zhua was holding a pen and drawing on her small drawing board. When she saw Zheng Tan, she dropped the pen and ran over. "Black Bro's gift for you." Little Zhua handed the pillow to little Zhua. "Thank you, Black Bro." The little kid didn't stand on ceremony. He took the pillow and opened it. Then, he put the pillow in the room directly at the head of the bed with a smile. Zheng Tan noticed that there was a small bookshelf in little Zhua's room. There were a few books on it that were taken from little Zhua's bookshelf. Zheng Tan had seen those books on little Zhua's bookshelf before. Looking carefully, there were a few books that had traces of being newly flipped through and children's-style bookmarks. On little Zhua's desk, there was a Chinese dictionary and an English dictionary. Both of them seemed to have been flipped through many times. Zheng Tan jumped on the table and looked at the books on the bookshelf. There were a few children's science books. The books had also been flipped through, but now they were placed at the corner of the bookshelf. From the corner of the bookshelf, he looked at the books from the easy to difficult. They covered a wide range of subjects. Some of them had been flipped through many times, and some of them had been flipped through very little. The ones that had been flipped through very little might not be because little Zhua didn't like to read them. It was just that he couldn't understand them now. However, Zheng Tan wasn't sure when that little kid would be able to understand them. Little Zhua hadn't been around for the past few years, so it definitely wasn't little Zhua who taught him. That little one should have taught him, but most of it was little Zhua's own choice. While little Zhua was hugging the pillow and watching cartoons, little Zhua was holding a photo album and looking at it by the big window in the room. Zheng Tan wasn't interested in watching cartoons with little Zhua, so he went over to see what little Zhua was looking at. Jumping on the table at the side, Zheng Tan saw that there was a yellowed black and white old photo in the photo album. There was a circle of lace on the side. In the photo was a man who looked to be in his 30s. However, he was in his 30s at that time. He should be in his 50s now, right? He looked a bit like little Zhua. Could he be little Zhua's father? There was a drawing next to the photo. The paper was already yellowed. It was probably about the same age as the old photo. However, the person who drew the picture wasn't very good at drawing. Zheng Tan couldn't see what was drawn on the paper. He could only see that it was something similar to a circle. Little Zhua's fingers rubbed the picture and the drawing on the paper through the protective film of the photo album. Then, she took out a golden badge from the drawer of the table beside her. The badge looked very similar to the drawing on the paper. Placing the golden badge next to the picture and the drawing on the paper, little Zhua remembered some things that happened to her father when he was alive. She always remembered that when she was young, after her father drew this picture on the paper, he said to her in a very yearning tone, "There is a golden badge. It symbolizes supreme honor." Unfortunately, until he passed away, he was still unable to obtain that small golden badge. Touching the lines on the golden badge, little Zhua said to Zheng Tan beside her, "Black charcoal, do you know that a tree needs green leaves that are exposed to the sun to carry out photosynthesis? It needs bright flowers with a fragrance to attract insects to spread pollen. It needs fruits to continue the next generation. However, it also needs roots that are buried in the soil and cannot see the sun to absorb water. This badge is proof of my sacrifice. It is also the promise that this country has given me. With it, no matter if Kitten is smart or stupid, this golden badge will protect him." Jing Tan knew that Zhua Kitten's father on the household register was not his biological father. However, all the official documents were the same as the ones on the household register. All the files might not be true, but they were definitely authentic. They couldn't be more authentic. No one knew Zhua Kitten's real background. She wouldn't be criticized and wouldn't have those strange looks. The values of the people of this era and the people of the past may be somewhat different. However, there are really many nameless heroes in this country. There were many people who couldn't come back after going there. No one remembered them. Only some files that wouldn't be made public recorded their achievements. Perhaps 1 or 2 medals that symbolized their achievements accompanied them to the ground. The world needed people to be praised. However, most of these people would never be known by people. "Brother Hey!" Zhua Kitten, who was watching TV, suddenly shouted. Hearing Zhua Kitten's shout, Jing Tan and little Zhua both came back to their senses and looked over. They originally thought that Zhua Kitten was calling them for something. However, Zhua Kitten was only watching TV and didn't look over at Zheng Tan. Because of the angle, Zheng Tan couldn't see what was on TV. He didn't plan to pay attention to it. However, he didn't expect Zhua Kitten to shout again. "Brother Hey! Mommy, Brother Hey is on TV," Zhua Kitten said to little Zhua. Little Zhua quickly wiped her tears and took a few deep breaths to adjust her mood. Then she smiled and walked over. Zheng Tan was also curious. When did he go on TV? He went over to take a look. Zhua Kitten was watching an entertainment program. There were several movie previews. Among them, there was the movie that Zheng Tan acted in last year. It was a very short clip. When Zheng Tan came over to watch, he only saw one scene and the ending, "just this summer." Then the trailer ended. Little Zhua didn't notice. She only saw a few short scenes in a hurry. She saw the black cat in the movie, but she didn't connect the black cat in the movie with Zheng Tan. However, Zhua Kitten said it with certainty and little Zhua didn't refute. Zheng Tan observed little Zhua's expression and found that she didn't recognize him. He was secretly relieved. As long as it wasn't easy to recognize him, he was still free to go out for a walk. The movie wasn't so similar to reality. When Zheng Tan was shooting, he also chose a lot of angles that were beneficial to him. He let the camera take pictures of him to make him look more handsome. In addition to the post-production and some small special effects, no one should be able to directly match the cat in the movie with a cheap cat like him who was wandering around all day. However, how did Zhua Kitten recognize him? Looking at the child, she was quite sure. Speaking of black cats, there were also people in the Western District compound who raised black cats. When he came over in the morning, he saw one that looked quite similar to him. Little Zhua didn't intend to argue with Zhua Kitten about this topic. She looked at the screening time and said to Zhua Kitten, "Kitten, Mommy will take you to see this movie." Okay, at the same time, in Er Mao's house on the 3rd floor of the Eastern District compound, Er Mao, who was also watching this channel, was testing milk for his daughter. Every time he mixed milk, he would taste it himself to see if there was any strange smell and how the temperature was. Although the little girl could eat now, he didn't forget to drink milk. Chapter 365. Er Yuan saw that her father was wasting her milk and called out, "Ah!" She was a little anxious, but she couldn't express anything too complicated. Seeing that Mao was still staring at the TV, Yuan was unhappy. She patted the chair and used her voice to express her dissatisfaction. Dad. Dad. Hearing Yuan's call, Mao finally turned around and passed the milk to Yuan. Daughter, that black coal actually acted in a movie. Brother Black? Yuan didn't understand what a movie was, but she knew that the black coal her father was talking about was Brother Black. Like Zhuo Xiao Mao, she and Wei Xiaopeng also called Jing Tan Brother Black. Yes. It must be that guy. I knew it with one look. Other than the black coal, no other cat can act like that. That look in its eyes is so naughty, Mao said. Yuan held the cup and drank the milk. She thought about what her father meant by naughty, naughty, naughty. She thought for a long time but couldn't understand. Forget it, she didn't want to think about it. Drinking milk was more important. When she saw Brother Black, she would learn from her father and say, naughty, naughty, naughty. Mao didn't know what his daughter was thinking. He was still shocked by the movie trailer just now. He was busy taking care of his wife and child last year and didn't pay much attention to the black coal. He didn't expect that it had already acted in a movie. What a simple life. After thinking for a while, Mao still couldn't calm down the curiosity and surprise in its heart, but it couldn't just go upstairs and ask. At this time, the cat must be hanging around outside, and it might even be flirting with a female cat. If Sheng Tan knew what Mao was thinking, he would definitely rush over and beat him up. Seeing the phone on the table, Mao picked it up and saw that Yuan was drinking milk seriously. He told her to put the cup aside and play by herself for a while. If she needed anything, she could call him. He would go next door to make a call. The nanny was hanging the clothes. Mao went to the next room after informing her. He closed the door, flipped through the address book, and called Celestine. Celestine was at the company checking a few shipping orders and stamping them. He was a little tired from looking at the orders, so he went outside to get some fresh air. When he heard Mao's call, Celestine wondered why Mao was calling him at this time. As soon as the call connected, Celestine heard Mao's exclamation. Senior, did you know? Black coal actually acted in a movie. It's not a pet commercial, it's a real movie. It's a big movie with a few small celebrities and it's on the big screen. Wei Ling choked on the word, create. It took him a while to realize what he was talking about. Speak properly, Celestine said. Mao, ever since his daughter, Yuan, could speak, he often talked to her. Although he influenced Yuan and let her learn a lot of words, Mao also learned some vague pronunciations and some habits when speaking to children. For example, he said eat as eat and sleep as sleep. If he only said this to children, it would be fine. Many parents did this, but Mao also said this when everyone gathered together. He even mixed in some baby language, which gave everyone goosebumps. A group of grown-ups talking like this when they were together. Celestine wanted to punch him. However, black charcoal acted in a movie? He seemed to have heard similar news last year. He thought it was just like the advertisement at the pet center, so he didn't take it seriously. Now that he looked at it, it was true. What's the name? Celestine walked into the office and sat beside the computer. He searched for the movie Black Cat, according to the name Mao mentioned. There was no cat's name on the cast list, only a few actors and the director's introduction. However, from the publicity, the director told the media that the black cat in the movie was borrowed from a friend. It was a trained black cat. Everyone called it Z, and its breed was unknown. Seeing this, Celestine laughed. Z? Breed unknown? It was obviously black charcoal. It even had a fake name. One stage name wasn't enough, so it came up with a second one. While he was looking, Mao called again. Did you see it? It's that black charcoal, right? Although it was a question, it showed a very certain meaning. Mao didn't doubt its eyesight at all. Yes. Celestine was on the phone while browsing the web. He had just finished watching the trailer posted on the internet. Anyway, he had nothing else to do. Since he happened to come across this matter, his interest was piqued and he read more. Hey, senior, it's not long before the release date. Why don't we go watch the movie together? Let's give Black Charcoal more box office? Mao said expectantly. He didn't go to the cinema often. In fact, there weren't many movies that attracted him. When he wanted to watch a movie, he would search online. Copyright and whatnot, it was just a term. Okay, let's go together then. Celestine was also looking forward to it. As one of the early people who knew the black cat, Celestine knew what kind of character the black cat was. "Oh right, senior, can children be brought into the cinema? It's been too long since I went to the cinema." "I don't know the rules," Mao said. "It seems that there are no restrictions. You want to bring Yuan to the cinema?" Yuan is too young. He's only 1.5 years old. Moreover, the sound in the cinema is loud, the air is bad, and the screen is flickering. I'm afraid it will affect the child's hearing and eyes. Celestine recalled what his wife had said before and told Mao. "I see. I'll ask when the time comes." Mao actually wanted to bring his daughter to the cinema. If the child's mother hadn't come back by then, would he go alone? Even if he went with his senior and the others, Mao still hoped that he could bring his daughter. Moreover, this was Black Charcoal's movie. How could Yuan's brother not go to the cinema to support him? However, the environment in the cinema was indeed not very good. Therefore, for the rest of the time, Mao was thinking of ways to reduce the impact of the cinema on the child. The Jiao family also knew that the movie was about to be released. They downloaded the trailer and watched it several times. Unfortunately, the trailer was too short. They could only hope that the release date would come soon. Before the release, all parties were busy promoting it. The actors weren't very famous, and there were also many newcomers. In terms of actors, other than the few idols who didn't bring much effect, there was nothing else. Director? He wasn't very famous. Compared to the few well-known directors, Kong Han was still a stranger. However, this time, there was a new element in it. It attracted a lot of people. The plot wasn't new, but they could watch the cat. Ever since the trailer was released, many people analyzed how the movie would do at the box office. Some people mocked the few scenes in the trailer, saying that the movie must have spent a lot of money to achieve such effects. It was common knowledge that the special effects of movies in the country were mostly unbearable. Why were the production costs of foreign blockbusters in the tens of millions or hundreds of millions of US dollars, but the domestic production costs were much lower? The computer special effects of the former started at 10,000 US dollars per second, while the special effects in the country were only a few hundred to a few thousand RMB per second. The difference in cost was obvious. It was true that you got what you paid for. There were many professionals in movie-related forums analyzing the special effects. The production costs of such special effects should be at least tens of millions, right? Back then, Cat and Dog War, Pig Baby, and other animal movies cost tens of millions of US dollars. You want to use tens of millions of US dollars to make an animal movie in the country? Are you looking for trouble? Isn't it a waste of money? Although animal movies are very popular, the production costs are too high. Basically, no one in the country is willing to do it. I didn't expect Kong Han to film it this time. I have to say, this director is still too young. A production cost of tens of millions of US dollars, I must go and take a look. The cat in the movie looks quite real, especially the scene in the trailer where the cat stood up and walked. It looks so natural. How much did the optical computer special effects cost? This was someone who loved to watch big-budget movies. They felt that small-budget movies were too crude. They belonged to the category of people who only bought the expensive ones and not the right ones. Some people went for the production costs and the computer special effects, while others went for the cat element. I don't know any Wei Wen, nor have I heard of any Shi Xiaotian. I just want to see the cat in the movie. Anyway, there aren't many movies to watch. It's rare to see a cat movie in the country. Let's support the domestic production. It won't cost much. Hey, that cat looks a lot like my dust ball. Behind the post was a large picture. The picture revealed the truth. Needless to say, the cat in the picture did look like Xing Tan. However, there were many stray cats in the country that looked similar. Other than this netizen, there were also pictures of other netizens who had black cats. Before the movie was released, all kinds of computer special effects professionals were criticizing each other on the internet. They were waiting to see the overall effect after the movie was released. Then, they would do a follow-up analysis and see who was right and who was wrong. Zheng Tan didn't believe that there was no one behind the scenes. However, it was a movie. Before it was released, it had to be promoted and promoted. What made Zheng Tan laugh the most was that some people used Yang Yi to ridicule him. I heard that Yi Xing Culture invested tens of millions of US dollars to film this movie. Does anyone know the details? Tens of millions of US dollars? Nonsense. Tens of millions of US dollars can be used to film so many movies in the country. Only you would believe those rumors. It's all hype, definitely hype. Who knows? I saw that the computer special effects were done well. Maybe it's true. Who asked Yang Yi to be so rich and willing to spend so much money? Who is Yang Yi? You don't know Yang Yi? He's the big boss of Yi Xing Culture, Mr. Moneybags. I'm kneeling to Mr. Moneybags. 23 RD. But how come I heard that the movie's production cost was only a few million RMB? 24th. You're an idiot. Don't tell me you're on the same technology forum as me. 25th. 23rd. Idiot. 26th. 23rd. Idiot +1. Zheng Tan was amused by the posts. He didn't know much about the production cost, but he had heard from Kong Han that the movie's production cost wasn't high. It could be considered a small production. If Kong Han's words were true, then the people on the technology forum were all monkeys. No one would believe that Zheng Tan had acted in the movie himself, especially the movements, eyes, and micro-expressions. There were no computer special effects, nor were there any stunt robots. The stunt cats that Kong Han had found were not used at all. Instead, they were fattened up. However, no matter what, the movie Black Cat had been hyped up before it was released because of the production cost. Everyone from Yang Yi and Kong Han to the actors and post-production team were exposed. Yi Xing Culture was also known by many people. Chapter 366. The movie would be released in mid-July. Zheng Tan went with the Jiao family. Although pets couldn't enter the cinema, there was a connection in the world. In fact, it wasn't the Jiao family who contacted him. It was Fang Xiaokong who called. Fang Xiaokong had connections. Moreover, Zheng Tan's participation in the movie couldn't be hidden from the third master Fang. He already knew about it. 2 days before the movie was released, the third master Fang, who was in Beijing, directly called the Jiao Pa and settled it. Fang Xiaokong also said that he would bring Fang Mengmeng to watch the movie together to support her. Er Mao and Celestine had Yi Hao's help. The group went together. Er Mao and Celestine took the children with them. They also prepared eye masks, earmuffs, and masks. If they found that they were affected too much, they would carry them out. The Jiao family's 4 families and 1 cat moved separately. They weren't in the same cinema as Celestine's group. As for Xiaozhua's group, Xiaozhua and some of Lord Zheng's students were watching the movie in a cinema near the school. How did it feel to watch your own movie? Zheng Tan expressed that he was nervous and a little embarrassed. After all, this was a movie. With so many people watching it, it was very different from watching a documentary at home. The atmosphere was something that could easily affect one's mood. Although he had Fang Xiaokong's phone call, the necessary measures still needed to be taken. Zheng Tan went into his backpack again. When the movie started, he came out. Little Pomelo sat beside him. Jiao Yuan sat on the right. Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma sat on the left and right. There were people blocking the left and right, so he wasn't afraid of being seen. As for the people in front, they didn't look back. Even if they saw Zheng Tan, it didn't matter. The people in front of him were known by the school. Zheng Tan didn't know how many people were sitting in the theater and whether it was full or not. If not many people came to watch, he would definitely be disappointed. This movie was not only Zheng Tan's achievement, but also directly related to the size of his red packet. If the box office wasn't good, he probably wouldn't get many red packets from Yang Yi. However, from the sound of it, it seemed to be quite full. Black Cat was a comedy film with a funny style. Coupled with the elements of Zheng Tan, the movie theater was filled with laughter. Jiao Ma and the others also laughed, but they were more interested in Zheng Tan's performance. The audience behind him was discussing in low voices. Is that cat a real cat? They must have used a real cat, but the scenes just now were all computer effects. Haven't you heard? Tens of millions of US dollars were invested in this movie. If converted to RMB, it would be over 100 million. When Zheng Tan heard this, he said in his heart, "T, I personally went into battle." He even deliberately NG'd a few more times. However, even if there were a few NGs, Kong Han was still quite happy. The laughter around him calmed down Zheng Tan's nervous mood. At the same time, he thought to himself, this movie should do well. When the time comes, Yang Yi should give me a big red packet. It was cool, cute, good at acting, and knew how to cooperate. Where else could Yang Yi find such a good cat actor? While the Zhao family was bringing Zheng Tan to watch the movie, Mao and Celestine were also discussing on the other side. They were watching from different angles. Senior, Black Coal's acting is not bad now. It's better than 2 years ago when he was shooting commercials. After all, he has years of experience. Didn't he shoot documentaries before? He improved quite a lot back then. But Senior, how much attention do you think he'll attract with his actions? Mao and Celestine knew Zheng Tan well. Even if they were not proficient in special effects, they knew something about it. If this movie became popular and the real production cost was exposed, how much attention would the jumping black cat on the big screen attract? When that time comes, going out for a walk would probably be impossible. Celestine paused and said, "There's someone behind it." Mao thought about it and agreed. Although they did not know how many people were behind it, it could be seen from the online debate before the movie was released that there were very few people who had their eyes on Z. There must be someone who was deliberately guiding them. At the same time, they also restrained the insiders and limited the exposure of the media. Just like Mao and Celestine, when they were arguing about the production cost, only the insiders knew the real situation of the movie. However, no one dared to say it. Yang Yi had already warned them. However, even if they signed a confidentiality agreement, there were still people who could not resist the temptation of the outside world and leaked the news. There were indeed people who leaked the news. However, that person did not appear in the company the next day. The circle did not see that person again. It was said that he resigned and went back to his hometown. No matter what the truth was, everyone only knew that it would be fine as long as they kept their mouths shut and listened to the instructions. As for Little Joie and the rest, everyone was happy because of the jokes in the movie. When Ronald was drinking the paw washing water, Little Joie laughed out loud and kept laughing. "Mommy, he drank Brother Hayes' paw washing water." Ha! Little Joie's laughter was filled with schadenfreude. Little Joie did not refute and only laughed in response. Little Joie and the rest did not think that the paw washing water Ronald drank was real. Who would let a celebrity drink cat paw water? They must have changed it during the filming. Little Joie always believed that Ronald drank Zheng Tan's paw washing water and kept laughing. Little Joie's juniors thought that children were indeed children. They took everything seriously. In fact, everyone who knew the inside story would be happy for a long time when they saw this scene. Little Joie did not know the inside story, but she believed that this scene was real. After Black Cat was released, all kinds of comments and reviews appeared on the internet. There were good comments and bad comments. Some people said that the movie was good. It was worthy of being made with tens of millions of USD. The computer made the cat look like a real cat. It was not as if there were no animal special effects movies of this level in the country. They liked it. Of course, there were also people who said that the plot did not have much meaning. The newcomers' acting skills were too bad, such as a certain Luo. When it came to meaning, there were not many commercial blockbusters that had any. Some people despised fast food culture, but it was reasonable that it existed. After a hard day of work, looking for something relaxing to watch was also a kind of adjustment. We are not cultured people. We watch movies for fun. If it was a literary blockbuster, I might not even go. The children at home are happy watching it. As long as they are happy, everything else is secondary. Some netizens said. Xing culture also took the opportunity to continue promoting the movie. They made full use of the internet and attracted a lot of viewers. Zheng Tan did not pay much attention to those. There were people at home these days, so it was not convenient for him to go online. However, according to Jiao Yuan and the others, the movie's box office was good after a week of release. It directly beat another movie with a Best Actor and a Best Actress. Everyone saw that the movie was so popular during this period of time. They all said that tens of millions of USD were spent on this movie. However, Yang Yi did not say anything. He put on airs. However, everyone took Yang Yi and Kong Han's silence as tacit agreement. All kinds of speculations were reported, and they were all very sure. In fact, Yang Yi and Kong Han did not know how many times they had celebrated in private. Movie special effects professionals were still arguing about the movie's minute, which scene used special effects, the cat's mouth could not be that shape, the cat could not be that cooperative, and so on. There were endless comments. At the same time, more people who had never seen a movie before and were not interested in this kind of movie went to the cinema to watch it. They then came back to join in the debate. In the cat and dog friends circle, the movie was also popular. It was a hot topic recently. There was once a critic who joked that Black Cat was a movie about cats and that the actors in the movie were all reduced to the background. Apart from Ronald, the other important actors did not care about the background of the movie. Even Wei Wen and Shi Xiaotian did not care about the background. To them, the most important thing was the attitude of the big boss towards them. Everything else was secondary. Unfortunately, Yang Yi had been pretending to be mysterious during this period of time. No one knew what this tycoon was thinking. The box office sales had already exceeded 100 million yuan, and it was still in the screening period. Zheng Tan did not know how much the box office sales would be in the end. He only knew that he would receive a huge red packet and did not care about the rest. As a cat, he did not want to live under the spotlight all the time. That way, he would lose his freedom. His cat life, which was already tough to begin with, would definitely become even tougher. Cats had no human rights. Fortunately, Yang Yi was there to take care of the aftermath. Third Master Fong seemed to have contributed as well. Until now, not many people had taken the direction of Z seriously. This summer, the Jiao family did not go on a long trip. As a cat who did not have any summer homework and spent most of his time on vacation, Jing Tan felt that his cat life was actually very boring. What do cats do most of the time? Some people might say that they play with their tails, fight with themselves, or lift things up with their hands. None of those, they just sleep. Take Depang for example. Sometimes, Jing Tan really wanted to tell this fat cat to go out and exercise. If you don't exercise, you'll get old. Everyone who saw Depang would think that it was a lazy cat. How could it not be lazy after being raised like this? Even rats would not be able to outrun it. Besides, it was already 6 years old. It would be impossible to catch it. However, Zheng Tan knew that was not the case. Yesterday, the sheriff was fighting with a cat in the west compound. Depang even went over to help. The sheriff was already on the losing end, but Depang went over and killed it instantly. Zheng Tan looked at the cat that screamed and ran away. In his heart, he lit a candle for it. For a long time in the future, that cat would probably run away from Depang whenever it saw him. Seeing Old Man Li take Flowery out for a walk, Zheng Tan thought for a while and ran over to jump on Flowery's back. They took the dog cart for a walk. Usually, Old Man Li would sneak over to the west compound to chat with a few old friends before coming back. Zheng Tan happened to go over to the west compound to take a look at Kitty Zhua. Flowery had a good temper. It was often bullied by the sheriff and the others, but it was not angry. After Zheng Tan jumped on, it did not refuse. This weight was nothing to Flowery, who was 100 kilograms. However, very soon Huang jumped on as well. Old Man Li found it funny. His Flowery had a good temper. It was kind to children and other animals. It was so big, but it was always bullied by these few kittens. The sheriff came out with a smirk. He looked and jumped on as well. Old Man Li wanted to say something, but when he looked up, he saw a certain fatty running over. Then he jumped on as well. Flowery looked at Old Man Li with a wronged expression. Woo, Old Man Li, actually, the 4 cats combined were not that heavy. Little Flower had played with the children in the courtyard before. Zheng Tan and the other cats combined were about the same weight as the children. After Little Flower expressed his grievances, he continued to carry the 4 cats steadily. People who walked past saw this and could not help but say, "This dog and cat have such a good relationship." Chapter 367. Little Flower didn't feel wronged for long. Not long after they walked out of the courtyard, Huang jumped down from the dog's back and ran back to the courtyard. It didn't leave the courtyard much and didn't run around. It jumped on the dog's back because it saw Xianxia's behavior and followed suit. The sheriff didn't stay for long. He saw a little Pekingese and ran after it. Xianxia always thought that the sheriff was born in the wrong body. He should be a dog. As for Depang, it jumped down at the intersection of the walkway to the courtyard and the main campus road. Then, it found a tree and squatted there, waiting for its old lady to come back. Therefore, when Old Man Li walked slowly with Little Flower to the west courtyard, only Xianxia was left on the dog's back. There were also many pet dogs in the west courtyard. When they saw Little Flower, they started barking. They were all small dogs like Chihuahuas and Pekingese. Although they were barking fiercely now, they wouldn't dare to run up once the leash was released. Dogs bullied people because of their master's power. This was the philosophy of dogs. 1 or 2 cats squatted on the tree, letting the dogs bark around them. They lazily looked in the direction of Little Flower and Xianxia. Those who knew Xianxia wouldn't come over to provoke him. Those who didn't know him didn't dare to go over. After all, there was such a big dog next to them. They were too lazy to get down from the tree. Zhuo was reading at home. When she heard the noise, she ran to the balcony with binoculars. Then she said to Xiaozhua, "Mommy, Brother He and Little Flower are here. I'll go down and play." Because Old Man Li often brought the dog here, some people in the west courtyard had a deep impression of Little Flower, whose size didn't match its name at all. However, everyone knew that this dog had a good personality. It didn't fight with other dogs and was good to children. Zhuo even rode it. Therefore, sometimes when she saw Little Flower come over, Zhuo would go over to play. Now that Xianxia was here, Zhuo wanted to go down even more. Xiaozhua was worried about him going down alone. After informing the nanny, she followed him downstairs. The children in the courtyard loved to play with Little Blossom because Little Blossom would not bite their balls. Someone in the courtyard even had a German Shepherd. That dog also loved to play with balls. However, the children in the courtyard did not play with it because many of the children in the west courtyard knew that if they threw their balls at the dog, their balls would not return. It was not that the blackback wanted to monopolize the ball, but it often used its teeth to bite the ball. With one bite, the ball would go through. Once, Xianxia saw a middle school student who was playing basketball in the Western District courtyard throw the ball over. Then, the basketball was deflated by the blackback teeth. Little Blossom stood under the shade of the tree. Some children came out to play with Little Blossom. Some children even climbed onto Little Blossom's body and treated him like a large plush toy. After Zhuo came down, she didn't go with them. She went to sit beside Xianxia and talked about the movie they watched a few days ago. When the little brat talked about Ronald drinking Xianxia's paw washing water, she couldn't help but laugh. Xiaozhua stood under a tree not far away. He smiled and looked over. He didn't interrupt Zhuo. No matter what other people thought, Zhuo was certain that the actor in the movie was Xianxia. However, other people only took it as a child's words and didn't take it seriously. After Zhuo finished talking about Xianxia's movie, she talked about Little Blossom. "Brother He, what's in the wine barrel that Little Blossom is wearing around his neck? Mom said that it's wine, but I don't believe it." Zhuo moved closer to Xianxia's ear and whispered, "I touched it once, but Little Blossom pushed it away before I could open it. But there's definitely no wine in it. According to the weight, it's not empty, and there's no liquid in it." Many people knew that in some pictures, Saint Bernard dogs always had an oval-shaped wooden barrel hanging around their necks. This was also their classic image. Some people said that the barrel was filled with wine. It was used to warm up the bodies of people who were in danger in the snow. It was said that Saint Bernard dogs used to rescue travelers in the snow. The wine in the barrel could warm up people trapped by avalanches and inspire their courage to survive. Of course, there were also people who said that the barrel was just a special decoration. Old Man Li had made a small barrel for Little Blossom to wear on a whim. Usually, other than some people that Old Man Li and Little Blossom were very close to, Little Blossom didn't like other people to touch the barrel. The barrel contained some of Old Man Li's medicine. Old people always had this kind of problem. Sometimes, they would forget to bring medicine with them, or some emergency items. Old Man Li would then use this small wine barrel. Such a big dog didn't feel tired carrying a small barrel filled with medicine. After wearing it for a few years, Little Blossom had already gotten used to it. The children who liked to play with Little Blossom were all told not to touch the barrel. If they touched it, Little Blossom would get angry. Although it wouldn't bite, it would push people away with its mouth. Because of this, when Old Man Lee bragged with others in the East Courtyard, he was very proud when he talked about his dog. Seeing that Kitten was very curious about the barrel that Little Blossom wore, Xianxia wanted to open the barrel on Little Blossom's neck one day and show it to Kitten. While Kitten and Xianxia were chatting about Little Blossom had already been taken away by Old Man Lee. There were 2 other old men following them. They were heading towards the entrance of the courtyard. They were probably going to do something outside the school. Some children hadn't had enough fun yet. When they were pulled back by their parents, they even negotiated with their parents, saying that they wanted to raise Little Blossom. There was a place to walk in the school. If they could apply for a permit and the dog was obedient, the people in the neighborhood wouldn't say anything. Saint Bernard wasn't considered a dog breed that liked to bark. However, the problem was that Little Blossom was so big. It was obvious that it was a foodie. If they didn't have some financial ability, they really couldn't afford to raise this big guy. It also liked to drool and shed fur. It was torturous. Old Man Lee and the others didn't have much to do after retirement. However, some people who worked couldn't even take care of their children, let alone raise a dog. Moreover, it was a big guy. Raising a dog? No way. That was what everyone thought in their hearts. However, in front of their children, they would always come up with other excuses to dispel their thoughts. Xianxia had good hearing. He found it funny when he heard the excuses that the parents came up with. Just as he was secretly laughing, he heard a bang from the gate of the west courtyard that led outside the school. Then, many people there started to make a ruckus. It was as if an accident had happened. Some parents saw that the situation wasn't right. They hurriedly brought their children home and locked them up. Then they went over to take a look. Little Joie also let Kitten go upstairs. Originally, she wanted Xianxia to go home too. However, Xianxia wanted to go over there to see what was going on. He heard Little Blossom's cry. Seeing that Xianxia wouldn't budge, Little Joie could only bring Kitten upstairs first. "Mom, what happened over there?" Kitten held Little Joie's hand. Although she was curious, she still went back obediently. "I don't know. Children shouldn't care about that." Kitten turned her head and saw Xianxia running over there. After going upstairs and returning home, Kitten stood on the balcony and looked over there. From upstairs, she could see some of the scenes outside the courtyard. Because of the angle, she couldn't see what was going on even with binoculars. She could only see that many people were gathering in one direction. Since she couldn't see, Kitten looked at Little Joie. Seeing that Little Joie had gone into the kitchen, she took the phone and dialed a number. The phone didn't ring for long before someone picked it up. "Hello, this is Zhu Yong's house." A very childish voice sounded from the other side. The words were unclear. It sounded as if he was eating something. At the same time, there were some crunching sounds. "Little pig, I'm Kitten. Do you know what's going on outside the courtyard?" Kitten asked. "I don't know. I'm watching TV." "Little Zhu, put down your popsicle. Then, pick up your binoculars and go straight to the balcony. Then, look in the direction of 2 o'clock. "Where is the direction of 2 o'clock? My alarm clock is on the bed. I can't see it." Little Zhu stood at the door of the room and looked helplessly at Kitten, who was holding the phone and directing the person on the other end of the phone to see what was going on outside. On the other side, when Xianxia arrived outside the courtyard, he found that many people had already gathered around. Little Blossom was still screaming. However, there were too many people around. Xianxia couldn't see what was going on, but he could guess that it wasn't anything good. This gate was outside the school. The gate was on a wide road. The western courtyard's cars often came in and out of this gate, so there were more guards here. The inspection was stricter. Now, when Xianxia came over, there was no one in the guard room. The security guards in charge of this side didn't see him either. They all ran to the scene of the incident. Just when Xianxia wanted to climb higher to see the situation, 3 people in security uniforms pulled Little Blossom out. Little Blossom was still growling. He was very dissatisfied with the people who pulled him out. He struggled and looked at the crowd from time to time. There were bloodstains on Little Blossom. He didn't know if it was his or someone else's. The 3 security guards tied Little Blossom's dog leash to an iron hook on the wall next to the guard room. Then, one of them immediately went to the crowd. The other 2 stood at the side to rest. They also dispersed the people who ran over to see what was going on. After listening to them, Zheng Tan found out that a person who wasn't very clear-headed just drove over and hit a motorcycle. The motorcycle and the people on it were all knocked out. The people and the motorcycle that were knocked out happened to be in the direction of Old Man Li and the others. Little Blossom blocked the motorcycle, but he didn't block the people. The people on the motorcycle hit Old Man Li and the others. The few old men were all lying down. "It shouldn't be life-threatening, right?" one of them said. "It should be fine." The owner of the car slowed down. The force of hitting the motorcycle wasn't very strong. The motorcycle owner shouldn't be in life-threatening danger. It's just that the injuries look a little scary. But those old men don't know. A person who jumped off a building can kill another person. A person who was knocked out can also injure another person. If it was a young person, it definitely wouldn't be dangerous. But after all, he's so old. Even a fall could be a big problem. If he was hit. Someone there said that Old Man Li and the others were sent to the hospital. It was the school's special ambulance. Little Blossom was tied to the side. He squatted there and looked in the direction of the crowd. He made a whining sound from his nose. His usually well-groomed fur was messy. There were many bloodstains and stains. There was also blood dripping down from his fur to the ground. Dripping blood? Zheng Tan went over to take a closer look. Little Blossom was injured. There were a few cuts, but they shouldn't be deep. He just didn't know if there were other problems. After all, some injuries weren't easy to see. Now, the people there were busy saving people and clearing the way. The police cars had also arrived. No one cared about Little Blossom here. Zheng Tan couldn't help with saving people. The school's ambulance had already sent them to the affiliated hospital. As for Little Blossom, this place wasn't far from the pet center. Zheng Tan untied Little Blossom's leash from the metal hook. Little Blossom went 1 round in that direction. He didn't find Old Man Li and was even chased away by a few policemen. Little Blossom turned around and ran toward Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan jumped on the dog's back and pulled the leash. He let Little Blossom go in the direction of the pet center. Chapter 368. The reason why Little Blossom could cooperate with Zheng Tan and run in the right direction was because Little Blossom was still a puppy. Saint Bernard was originally a big dog. Even when it was a puppy, it was still bigger than other small dogs. Naturally, it was bigger than Zheng Tan and the other cats. However, Little Flower's personality meant that it was destined to be bullied by the 4 cats in the courtyard. From then on, Zheng Tan began to train Little Blossom. However, other people thought that it was just a game between cats and dogs. No one thought that Zheng Tan was training a dog. Therefore now, Zheng Tan only needed to gently pull the collar on Little Blossom's neck, and Little Blossom would run in the direction of the pull. If he pulled the collar back, Little Blossom would stop. After a few years, they had a tacit understanding. The passers-by saw this pair and thought it was quite interesting. However, the blood on Little Blossom's body made many people flinch. Little Blossom led Zheng Tan all the way to the pet center. He didn't let the passers-by look at him. Not long after Zheng Tan and Little Blossom left, the situation at the entrance of the western courtyard stabilized. The road was completely cleared. It didn't look like an accident had just happened. A few guards were talking about what had just happened. A young man in a school guard uniform ran over. "Hey, Xiao Wang, what are you doing here? Although there was an accident here, we didn't inform you to come over. You can't leave your post without permission," one of the guards said with a frown when he saw the young guard. "No, Brother Lu, I received a call from Brother Zhang. He said that he sent Professor Li and the others to the affiliated hospital. Professor Li woke up in the car and asked us to take care of Little Blossom. He said that Little Blossom was also injured." "Brother Lu, who is Little Blossom?" The young guard looked around as he spoke. He had heard that there was an accident here and saw the school hospital's ambulance leave. However, they couldn't leave their post without permission. Therefore, he suppressed his curiosity and didn't come over. He didn't expect to receive a call not long after. The person who sent Professor Lee and the others over thought that the matter here was not settled yet, so he did not call the security guards in the Western District compound. Instead, he called the young security guard who had been working a lot easier recently and asked him to take care of Xiaohua. However, he did not know who Xiaohua was, and the other party hung up without saying anything. After receiving a call from his colleague, the young guard immediately came over. However, he didn't know much about the people and things in the school. He had only heard of Professor Lee's name on the phone. He didn't know Professor Lee or Little Blossom. He thought Little Blossom was Professor Lee's relative or something. When he came over, he wondered why Little Blossom didn't go to the hospital with the ambulance. When he came over, he looked around and didn't see any injured people. Little Blossom? An older guard was stunned and looked around. Didn't I tie Xiaohua to the side at that time? Why is it gone? Bull? The young guard was even more confused. Is that Professor Lee's big dog? Someone said they saw it just now, someone said. They asked around and realized that the dog had disappeared when they weren't paying attention. I've asked the guards in the East District. They said they haven't seen him return. A guard put down the phone and said, "Hurry up and look at the surveillance cameras." Even if it was a dog, they had to be responsible if they lost it. Moreover, this dog had saved people. Professor Lee was still talking about it while lying in the ambulance. It seemed that the dog was very important to Professor Lee. They gathered in the surveillance room and pulled up the footage captured by the cameras at the entrance. That one. I told you I tied it to the side. The older guard pointed at the footage and said. The footage showed the three of them pulling the dog out of the crowd and tying it to the side. Then they stared intently at the dog on the screen. Then, from the footage captured by the camera, they saw a black cat, which was not much bigger than the dog, untie the dog's leash. The dog ran back and forth, and then the black cat jumped on the dog's back and rode the dog away. The guards, they were speechless. On the other side, Jing Tan brought Little Flower to the pet center. Although Old Man Lee brought Little Flower there once or twice a month, Old Man Lee would bring Little Flower there either by bike or by car. Little Flower didn't remember the way. Now that it had Jing Tan's guidance, it didn't make any mistakes. After seeing the pet center, Little Flower's anxiety towards the unfamiliar environment dissipated. Jing Tan didn't let Xiaohua go directly to the pet center's main entrance. Instead, he let Xiaohua go through the side door and go straight to Xiaogua's studio. If they went through the main entrance, not everyone would know Xiaohua. If no one brought it, it would be inconvenient for it to do anything. If it needed treatment, it would have to wait. It was different at Xiaogua's studio. Even if no one brought it and there was no money to pay for the treatment, Xiaogua would treat Xiaohua's wounds first. Now that Old Man Lee wasn't there, the situation was unclear. Old Man Lee's family members were probably busy with Old Man Lee's affairs at the hospital. No one would notice Xiaohua for the time being. Leaving Xiaohua with Xiaogua was the best solution at the moment. The people in Xiaogua's studio didn't have much work to do today. They were all free to move around and think about how to shoot the next promotional video. As the number of views of the video on the website increased, more and more advertisers came to the studio. However, they still had to grasp the quality of the video. They couldn't fool people. They were watching TV and chatting in the room with the air conditioner. Suddenly, they heard a knock on the door. The sun is so bright at this time. Who's here? Who cares who it is? Hurry up and open the door. It might be a big client, an employee joked. The person closest to the door shook his head. He got up and walked over to open the door. When he opened the door, he saw a dog's head. A big dog covered in blood was looking at him. If he didn't see Jing Tan on the back of the dog, the employee who opened the door would have been scared and closed the door first. They were in charge of filming, not veterinarians. They weren't familiar with the customers in the pet center. They only remembered a few people who were in contact with them often. They were unfamiliar with Little Flower. Moreover, Little Flower had a lot of blood stains on its body. It was tired from running over. It opened its mouth and panted heavily. It looked a little scary. Boss? They couldn't handle this matter. They could only ask Xiaogua to come out. Xiaogua heard someone shouting in the lounge. He came out and looked. When he saw Zheng Tan and Little Flower, he was also shocked. He walked over and looked at the wine barrel that Little Flower was wearing. The wine barrel had Little Flower's name printed on it. This wine barrel was Little Flower's dog tag. All the information was printed on it. This made Xiaogua feel a little relieved. He was afraid that this black cat would kidnap the dog. Little Flower still remembered Xiaogua's smell, so it didn't reject it. Xiaogua sometimes went to the courtyard to look for Zheng Tan. Occasionally, he would also go to see Little Flower. The few pet owners in the courtyard all knew Xiaogua. Old Li and the others lived on the first floor. Little Flower's kennel was also on the first floor. It was more convenient to visit. Oh, it's Little Flower. There were very few pet owners around. He just wanted to confirm it by looking at the wine barrel. Little Flower ran over on its own this time. He didn't see Old Li, so Xiaogua was a little confused. Although he was confused, Little Flower's injuries still had to be treated quickly. He called the veterinarians in the pet center and brought Little Flower over. Meow. Sesame stood at the door and looked around. It smelled a strange smell. When it saw Zheng Tan, it trotted over. Sesame was now a size bigger than Zheng Tan. It was about the same size as peanut candy. If they were to really compare, Sesame was a little bigger than peanut candy. Zheng Tan wasn't in the mood to play with this guy. He wanted to go over and see how Little Flower was doing. Just now, he only wanted to hurry over to the pet center to treat Little Flower's injuries. He neglected Little Flower's physical condition. Previously, when he saw Little Flower being dragged away by the guards, he didn't see anything wrong with it. When it was hiding from the police, it also ran pretty fast, so he didn't think too much about it. Now that he was here, Zheng Tan was a little worried. If it already had internal injuries, would it be more serious if it ran over here? Although it hadn't been long since it came here from school, no one could be sure about its injuries. Little Flower was already more than 5 years old. It was said that the average lifespan of a large dog was shorter than that of a small dog. If it had some hidden injuries, would it shorten Little Flower's lifespan? In the past, Zheng Tan didn't have any feelings for cats and dogs. But in the past few years, he watched the cats and dogs in the courtyard grow up. They also played together on a daily basis. In the eyes of many people, they were childhood friends who grew up together. Although many cats were considered adults when they were 1 year old, from a human's point of view, whether it was 1 year old or 5 years old, they were all categorized as children. Just as he was about to follow Xiaogua to check on Little Flower's condition, he heard movement behind him. Zheng Tan turned around and realized that Sesame was following him. He raised his hand to push Sesame's head back into the house. It was a hot day, and it had a body full of eye-catching fur. It was better for Sesame to be obedient and bring it into the house. When Little Flower was receiving treatment, Xiaogua also called Old Man Li. The person who answered the phone was Old Man Li's wife. Because she was too worried about Old Man Li's condition, she didn't say much when Xiaogua called. She only said that she wanted Xiaogua to help take care of Little Flower. Little Flower's examination results came out very quickly. There are no serious fractures, and there are no problems with the internal organs. Those injuries are easy to heal. According to the file, it's between 5 and 6 years old. It's still a Saint Bernard in its prime. Professor Li usually takes good care of it. Little Blossom will have no problem living for another 5 or 6 years. A few days ago, someone brought a Saint Bernard over. It's already 13 years old and it's still living well. It's good that there are no major problems. Don't be stingy with the medicine. Professor Li is still thinking about the dog even when he's lying in the hospital. This dog saved someone just now, Xiaogua said. Okay, I got it, the veterinarian replied. Xiaogua's words were to tell him that first, this dog was a good dog and was worth saving. Second, he didn't have to worry about the medical fees. The owner would pay for it eventually. Hearing the veterinarian talking to Xiaogua about Little Flower's condition, Zheng Tan was relieved. It was good that there weren't any major problems. Actually, now that he thought about what he heard at the entrance of the courtyard, Zheng Tan felt that with Little Flower's reaction speed, it could easily dodge the motorcycle that was sliding over. However, Little Flower probably didn't want Old Man Li behind it to get hurt, so it blocked the motorcycle. If the car hit the motorcycle with more force, Little Flower might not have survived. However, Old Man Li really cared about Little Flower. The old man himself hadn't settled down yet, and he was still thinking about the dog. Chapter 369. Xiaohua was picked up after staying in the pet center for 3 days. Because the injury was not serious, the medicine used was good. Plus, according to the vet, Xiaohua was still a young man with good recovery ability. After the wound was treated and the fur was cleaned, it looked almost the same as usual. Every few days, he would come back for a checkup to see if there was any infection or other unnoticed injuries. Old Man Li's life was not in danger. Because of his age, he had many old problems, so he was asked to stay in the hospital for observation for a few more days. Not only Old Man Li, but the other old men who were hit were also asked to stay in the hospital for observation. Anyway, Old Man Li had company, so he was not lonely. However, Old Man Li still missed Xiaohua every day. How good was it to have Xiaohua? It could be used as a towel to wipe the water, as a backrest, and to warm the feet in winter. It was much more useful than the woolen thermal slippers that his children bought. The dog was big and majestic. It looked good when he took it out. It was not afraid of being robbed at night and would protect its owner when it was in danger. It was such a good dog. He missed it after not seeing it for a day. They were an old couple and did not live together with their children and grandchildren. Usually, Xiaohua was the one who accompanied Old Man Li the most. Even his wife had to stay behind. The old lady had her own things to do, but the dog did not. The man and the dog did not separate from each other even when they were eating and sleeping. At night, the dog lay beside their bed. He always felt safe with such a big dog by his side, especially when he heard that there were thieves. Old Man Li touched Xiaohua's head and sighed. It was better to have a dog. Old Man Li lay on the bed and looked outside the window. He sighed. Unfortunately, the hospital did not allow dogs. Teacher Jiao's family had secretly brought a cat in before. Don't think that he did not know. But with Xiaohua's size, anyone who was not blind could see it. It was impossible to bring it in secretly. Every day, besides resting and chatting with his old friends, Old Man Li lay on the bed and groaned as if he had a toothache. Old Man Li's wife found it funny. He just missed the dog. "I'll bring Xiaohua here tomorrow," Old Man Li's wife said. Old Man Li's grumbling toothache disappeared immediately. How? The hospital doesn't allow it. It's okay. I'll leave it with the hospital's guard. I know a guard. Just say hello. I'll go down and walk around. Even if I can't leave the hospital, I should be able to walk around, right? Also, you'll be safe with Little Blossom. Thieves won't dare to look for you. On this day, when Jing Tan went out for a walk, he saw Old Man Li's wife carrying a lunchbox in one hand and holding Xiaohua's hand in the other as they walked towards the affiliated hospital. Sometimes, when she felt tired carrying the lunchbox, she would put it on the dog's back for a while. Was he going to visit Old Man Li? Other than Old Man Li's wife, Zheng Tan also met Xiaozhua, who was riding a bicycle. Now that Xiaozhua was back, she was not in a hurry to go to work. With Lord Zheng around, it was not a problem whether she wanted to stay in school or do other things. The most important thing for Xiaozhua now was to recuperate. She did not receive the late-stage recuperation treatment in the project team. After she came back, she could not fall behind in the treatment. For little kitten Zhua, she also had to have a good rest. Zheng Tan went out for a walk in the morning and sometimes saw little Zhua. Little Zhua was receiving treatment at the affiliated hospital. He didn't have to go there every day. He just had to go there once every few days. Little Zhua was also obedient. There was a nanny at home, so she didn't have to worry. Because little Zhua was familiar with Xiaohua, Xiaozhua also had some understanding of Old Man Li and the old lady. After greeting Zheng Tan, Xiaozhua got off the bicycle and pushed it with the old lady. She also put the lunchbox in the old lady's hand on the basket of the bicycle to save the old lady the trouble of carrying it. After they walked into the hospital gate, Zheng Tan squatted behind the flower bed and looked around. It was not good to squat on the wall. He still remembered the situation when he came to the hospital and was scolded by people. The old lady talked to the guard for a while, then tied Xiaohua to a small open space behind the guard room. She asked Xiaohua to stay there obediently, and then walked in with Xiaozhua. The guard was told to help look after the dog. This was okay. Moreover, it was not easy to see people coming in and out behind the guard room. It would not scare the patient. He also used a disposable paper cup to get some water for Xiaohua to drink. Xiaohua licked it casually and stopped drinking. It lay in the shade and panted with its tongue out. Its eyes stared at the direction the old lady left. The guard sat in the guard room and looked at the dog that stayed quietly behind. When he heard the old lady say the name Xiaohua yesterday, he thought it was a butterfly dog or a toy dog like a Pomeranian. In the end, when he heard the old lady say it was a Saint Bernard, he knelt down. It was an adult dog that weighed almost 100 kilograms. No wonder the old lady was in a difficult position. Not long after, Old Man Li came over. He walked quickly and did not even let the old lady help him. It looked like Old Man Li really did not have any major problems. He would probably be able to go back after a few days of observation. Old Man Li could not help but cry when he saw Xiaohua. The injured parts of Xiaohua's body were shaved and looked very obvious. After seeing Old Man Li, Xiaohua was also happy. It whimpered and wanted to rush over. Unfortunately, it was tied up, so when it was pulled by the rope, it looked like it was standing. It was big to begin with. When it stood up, it was taller than a person. It was obvious that it was a heavy fellow. If it were to fall on Old Man Li, it would be terrifying. Even if it were to put two paws on Old Man Li would have to lie down for a while. The guard wiped the sweat on his forehead a few times. The old lady also knew that if Xiaohua pounced on her, it would be terrible. She quickly stopped Xiaohua's excitement. "Xiaohua, sit down, sit down." The old lady quickly comforted Xiaohua. Hearing the order, Xiaohua sat down. However, it still whimpered at Old Man Li and wagged its tail vigorously. Old Man Li walked over quickly. He raised his hand and patted Xiaohua's head. "Xiaohua, my Xiaohua, you've suffered." The guard in the guard room trembled. He felt a layer of goosebumps on his arms. When he looked over again, he saw Xiaohua licking Old Man Li's face until it was covered in saliva. Disgusting. This kind of big dog, especially with its mouth shape, was the most disgusting. After thinking about it, the guard decided not to look over there. Old Man Li cuddled with Xiaohua for a while. He thought of something and went to look for the guard. He remembered seeing a weight scale in the guard room before. Because there was something wrong with the height measurement on the scale, no one fixed it. It was left in the corner of the guard room. Sometimes, a few guards would weigh it to see if it had fattened up. He went over to take a look. As expected, the scale was still there. "Although it's not convenient to measure the height, the weight is quite accurate," said the guard. Old Man Li stood on the scale and weighed it. Not bad. It was similar to the checkup in the hospital. He untied the rope and called Xiaohua over. It was so big that it was a little squeezy to stand on it. However, since it was not its first time standing on a scale like this, Xiaohua did not need Old Man Li to say much. It stood properly. 95 kilograms. "Your dog is really..." The guard wanted to praise it. This dog was almost 10 kilograms heavier than a Saint Bernard owned by a friend of his. His friend often bragged about how big and strong his Saint Bernard was. Therefore, when he saw the scale, the young guard really wanted to praise it. In the end, before he could finish, Old Man Li's face was full of frustration. "It's lost so much weight." As he said that, Old Man Li even went over to pat the dog's head. He said with heartache, "Xiaohua, my poor Xiaohua, you've suffered." Zheng Tan and the guard. This time, it was not just the guard. Even Zheng Tan trembled a few times. Before the guard could say the word, "Okay," he swallowed it back. Old Man Li could not stay outside all the time. There was a routine checkup later and he had to take medicine. Now that they had the dog, the old lady had to give Old Man Li a simple cleaning when they went back. He did not want to go into the ward with dog fur all over his body. If the other people in the ward were allergic to dog fur, it would not be good if there were any negative effects. Old Man Li reluctantly spoke to Xiaohua for a while before leaving. Before he left, he even held the young guard's hand and said seriously, "Young comrade, I'll leave my Xiaohua to you." The guard's smile was a little forced. Why did those words sound so awkward? After thinking for a while, he remembered that when his elder brother went to his girlfriend's house to discuss the wedding last week, his elder brother's father-in-law held his elder brother's hand and said seriously, "June, I'll leave my Liz hen to you." After Old Man Li left, Xiaohua lay behind the guard's room. This time, she looked much better. Xiaohua was a little anxious when she did not see Old Man Li previously. Now, she finally calmed down. For the next few days, whenever the old lady came to visit Old Man Li with a lunchbox, she would bring Xiaohua along. Today, the weather forecast said there would be a strong wind, but it was not obvious in the morning. There was no sun and there was a little wind, but it was not considered a strong wind. Even so, it was enough to disperse the scorching heat. Some children even ran to the pond to play. Old Man Li's wife carried a thermal lunchbox as usual. She held Xiaohua's hand and walked towards the affiliated hospital. This little bit of wind was nothing to her. However, she still wore a mask. The wind was strong. Sometimes, there would be dust in some places. It was better to wear a mask. Zheng Tan went with them. However, today, Zheng Tan did not go to the hospital. Instead, he went to the lakeside villa to see what Feng Baijin and Hu Zi were doing. Then he could get a free meal there. Recently, there were more cats in the lakeside villa area. Every time Zheng Tan went there, he could see cats chasing each other and playing around. Usually, in the afternoon, 3 to 5 cats could be seen lying under the willow tree. Occasionally, when fish jumped out of the water, they would move their ears and open their eyes to look in that direction. However, even if it was a scene of collective laziness, the style could change in the next moment. Did you know what would happen if you threw a lively grasshopper into a group of cats? Zheng Tan had tried it before. That day, he happened to catch a grasshopper that jumped in front of him. It was probably caught by a cat. One of its legs was broken, and there were traces of cat claws on its body. However, this grasshopper was still quite happy. It jumped boldly and directly in front of Zheng Tan. It even planned to jump over Zheng Tan and jump into the bushes. After Zheng Tan caught it, he threw it to the place where the cats were lying under the willow tree. Then, the cats that were lying there lazily a moment ago suddenly became alert. Their pupils dilated. Looking at the grasshopper that was being fought over by the 5 cats, Zheng Tan silently lit a candle in his heart. When Zheng Tan came over, Feng Baijin was playing a game. It was probably a new game that he had created. Zheng Tan had never seen that game before. Hu Zi was lying on Feng Baijin's lap. When Feng Baijin moved, it snorted twice unhappily, indicating that it was disturbed and that Feng Baijin should not move. Chapter 370. After eating lunch at Feng Baijin's house, Zheng Tan planned to stay for a while and watch Hu Zi fight other cats in the neighborhood. However, after seeing the chat history between Feng Baijin and his classmate, Zheng Tan decided to leave quickly and go home. Feng Baijin had a classmate's house in the neighboring city. When the two of them were chatting, Zheng Tan saw that Feng Baijin said that there was a hailstorm and a strong wind. The wind outside Chuhua City seemed to be getting stronger too, but there was no rain or hailstorm. Zheng Tan had been in Chuhua City for a few years, but he had never seen hailstorms here. He had heard of hailstorms in the suburbs, but he had never seen hailstorms in the city. It usually only rained in the city. Looking at the sky, Zheng Tan decided to leave quickly. The weather was getting worse. After leaving the lakeside villa area, Zheng Tan ran back. A strong wind blew, and some bicycles that were parked on the side fell in a row. The trees on both sides of the road were bent by the wind, and the leaves rustled. Something was blown up by the wind and hit some of the parked electric cars and cars, making a sharp alarm sound. Zheng Tan didn't look at it for long. He just wanted to go back quickly so that he wouldn't be afraid of the wind or rain outside. When he passed by the affiliated hospital, Zheng Tan thought of Xiaohua, who was tied up there. He jumped on the wall and looked inside. Xiaohua was still lying there. Its eyes were squinted because of the wind, and its fur was messy. The guard was helping a patient in and didn't care about Xiaohua. At this moment, another gust of wind blew. A tree near the guard room was blown down. It broke from the trunk, and the broken part fell towards the guard room. Xiaohua saw it and stood up to avoid it, but because it was tied up, it couldn't break free. Luckily, Zheng Tan saw that the tree fell slightly to the side, so it wouldn't crush Xiaohua. However, Little Blossom didn't know that. It only saw the tree falling towards it. After it failed to break free, it tried to break free a few more times. Coupled with the stimulation from the falling tree, it struggled even harder. It was as if it was trying its best to break free. This time he was serious. He was not fooling around with Old Man Li like he usually did. Such a big dog really had a lot of strength when it got serious. Little Blossom's dog leash was tied to a steel pillar. The pillar was fixed in place, and Little Blossom could not pull it. The broken part was the hook between the dog leash and the collar. The hook was detached from the dog leash. Zheng Tan wanted to help Little Flower untie, but Little Flower had already broken the rope. After breaking free, Xiaohua's first reaction was to run in the direction where Old Man Li and the old lady had left. However, there were many people there, and they were also on guard against Xiaohua, the big dog. After being chased away, Xiaohua ran out of the hospital. Since it could not enter the hospital, it would go home. Seeing Zheng Tan at the entrance of the hospital, Xiaohua immediately sped up and ran towards Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan jumped onto Little Blossom's back. He hooked the collar around the dog's neck to stabilize it. Then, he moved the collar, indicating that Little Blossom could go back. With Zheng Tan around, Little Blossom did not run around like before. Moreover, it had been brought here by the old lady for the past few days. It remembered the way. While running, Zheng Tan realized that it had started to rain. This was not a good sign. If it was raining, Zheng Tan would not mind. However, Little Blossom was still injured and had not fully recovered. It would not be good if it got wet. Now it was windy. It seemed that the storm was about to start. There was a traffic jam at the T-junction in front. There were many cars and people. The road ahead was so blocked that Little Blossom could not squeeze through. An old lady even chased Little Blossom away with an umbrella when she saw it. It could not go on like this. Summer rain would not give you much time to react. It might rain down in the next moment. He thought about the distance between here and the courtyard. Although it was not far, with Little Blossom's running speed, it would still take 5 minutes. He did not know if it could last for 5 minutes in this weather. If it started to rain immediately, even if it stayed outside for 2 seconds, it would be drenched. "Hey, over there!" Someone shouted in his direction. Zheng Tan did not think that it was him at first. The voice shouted a few more times. Then, it added a me at the end of the sentence. This was how people called cats in this area. Zheng Tan looked over. Not far away, at the entrance of a small grocery store, a middle-aged man stood there and looked in Zheng Tan's direction. When he saw Zheng Tan looking over, he waved his hand. Zheng Tan hesitated for 2 seconds. In the end, he decided to go over and take shelter from the rain. The rain was about to get heavier. He could not delay any longer. He had to be decisive. He pulled on the collar and signaled Little Blossom to go over. Little Blossom was a little confused. It looked at the grocery store and then turned to look at Zheng Tan. It still followed Zheng Tan's instructions and walked over. However, it was still vigilant. When it was 2 meters away from the grocery store, it stopped and looked at the person standing beside the cashier. "Come in." The person waved his hand again. Little Blossom did not move. Zheng Tan jumped down from the dog's back and walked into the store first. It sniffed and looked in a direction. On a tall shelf, a very clean white cat was squatting on it. It looked down at Zheng Tan, who was walking in. Its pupils contracted, and its eyes looked a little sharp. Zheng Tan ran out and pushed Little Blossom into the store. Little Blossom followed Zheng Tan's push and slowly moved into the store. However, it was still vigilant. After it went in, it sniffed the surroundings. Then, it squatted near the door and did not go inside. As long as it was not drenched in the rain, Little Blossom's wound would not be a problem for the time being. If it got infected, even if it was not a serious injury, it would worsen. After Little Blossom entered the store, Zheng Tan looked at the person leaning against the cashier. The shop owner looked to be in his 40s. His skin was a little dark. It was not clear if it was natural or because of the sun. He had a very mean-looking face. With a cigarette in his mouth, he looked in the direction of Zheng Tan and Little Blossom. Generally speaking, aunties and old ladies would tell their little grandsons to stay away from such people when they saw such people. It couldn't be helped. A person's face could leave a first impression on others. People who looked amiable would also feel close to them at first glance. However, people who looked fierce or harsh like this person in front of them were treated differently. However, for animals, a person's face had nothing to do with an impression. If you were kind to them, Many animals would feel close to you. When Zheng Tan saw the cat on the shelf, he felt that this person was not a bad person. He and Little Blossom were only here temporarily to avoid the rain. They did not want to interfere with this person's interests, so it should be fine. Moving his ears, Zheng Tan heard a sound and looked toward the back of the store. A young man came out with a box of umbrellas. "Boss, these are all the umbrellas. I tore up all the previous prices. They were all 15 yuan per umbrella. *CK. The man was talking when he saw the big dog squatting at the door. He almost threw the box of umbrellas to the ground. "Oh, boss, where did the dog come from?" The young man looked very scared. He did not go closer. Holding the box of umbrellas, he looked at the person next to the cashier. "I called it in to avoid the rain. What are you afraid of?" "I'm afraid of dogs. I was bitten by a dog when I was young. Since then, I have felt that animals like dogs are really scary. I don't understand why so many people like dogs." "Okay, put the umbrellas there. You can take a nap in the back," the owner said with a cigarette in his mouth. His words were not very clear, and there was an obvious dialect. If Zheng Tan was not familiar with dialects, he would not have understood. The young man understood. He was already used to this way of speaking. He quickly put down the box of umbrellas and slipped away. He did not forget to close the door to the back room, as if he was afraid that the big dog in front of the door would enter. The shop owner took out a pen and wrote something on a piece of white paper. Then, he took the paper and moved the box of umbrellas to the entrance of the shop. The paper was hung on a shelf above. It was written in black and white, and it was written in bold font, "Umbrellas and raincoats for sale. Special price of 20 yuan per umbrella." If Zheng Tan was not hallucinating, the young man said that the umbrellas were sold for 15 yuan when he moved the box over. 20 yuan was a special price. It was indeed a special price. He was a profiteer. After Zheng Tan and Little Flower entered the house, the rain turned into a storm in less than 2 minutes. The raindrops splashed on the ground, and Little Flower could not help but take a step back. The wind outside became stronger. Basically, as soon as they went out, they would get wet. The wind was too strong, and the rain would still drift into the house. Therefore, the owner closed most of the door, leaving only the part where the umbrellas were placed. The box was covered with a layer of cloth. It was waterproof, so there was no need to worry about the rain falling into the box. Needless to say, there were many people who came to buy umbrellas and raincoats. Many of them hurriedly paid the money and left with the umbrella. Of course, there were also people who bargained, but in the end, they were always rejected. They would not give a cent when buying other small things. In short, they did not bargain. The owner walked to the cashier and started to fiddle with an electric fan. The kind of desktop electric fans used by students. Usually, the students in the school would take the fans and fix them when they stopped working. Some would sell them at a low price. The fan in the shop owner's hand was probably bought from a student at a low price. After fixing it, he could sell it for some money. Clang. Zheng Tan looked in the direction of the sound. 2 young men with dyed hair and wearing short-sleeved t-shirts with skulls on them walked in. The sound came from them kicking the metal frame at the door. Both of them were soaked. They wiped their flip-flops on the dry paper box beside them and were cursing. After seeing Xiaohua, they paused and restrained themselves. Most people were still afraid of this kind of big dog. The 2 of them took 2 umbrellas and some other things from the shop and came to the cashier. "The total is 72. 30 yuan. "Thank you," the shop owner said. "It's so expensive." "Make it cheaper," the young man said as he put the things into a bag. "No bargaining, 72. 30 yuan. "Thank you," the shop owner said again. The shop owner said again. He didn't say anything about the young man putting the things into the bag without paying. "Hey, you old thing wasting time. I told you to make it cheaper, so make it cheaper. You don't understand nice words, right?" As he spoke, the young man took out a 50 yuan bill and slammed it on the counter, intending to take the things and leave. However, the shop owner reacted faster. Before the young man could take the bag, he was twisted and pressed against the counter. Ouch, ouch, ouch. The young man's face was distorted. He did not know why, but when he moved a little, it hurt so much. It was as if his face was going to be broken. "What are you doing?" the other young man said angrily. He looked to the side, intending to take the mop. It was easier to talk with a stick in hand. Woof! Little Blossom realized something and called out. She even growled at the person who was trying to get the mop. The young man's hand was about to touch the mop, but he was scared by the dog's barking. Chapter 371. In the affiliated hospital, the old lady panicked when she received the call from the guard. Just now, Old Man Lee had fallen asleep after taking his medicine and injections. The old lady leaned against the chair beside him and took a nap as well. The other people in the ward who were awake were discussing the changes in the weather outside. They deliberately lowered their voices. However, when they saw a tree being blown down by the wind, someone could not help but let out a louder cry of surprise. The old lady woke up because of their exclamations, so did Old Lee. After seeing the weather outside the window, the two elders couldn't stay calm, especially Old Lee. The first thing that came to his mind was that Xiaohua was still tied up in the guard room. What would happen to Xiaohua in such a windy and rainy day? Before the old lady could make a call, the guard called. The old lady had left her phone number with the guard. Therefore, when the guard saw Xiaohua run away, he immediately called the old lady to explain the situation. The two elders were worried that Xiaohua had run away. However, when they remembered that Xiaohua ran away with Professor Xiao Jiao's cat, they calmed down a little. A few days ago, when Little Blossom was injured, it was Professor Jiao's cat that brought Little Blossom to the pet center for treatment. Little Gua had told the two elders about this, and Old Man Lee had even called Professor Jiao to thank him. Old Lee even told the old lady in private, Professor Xiao Jiao is a good person and a good cat. However, the weather outside wasn't good. Old Lee couldn't rest in peace. He asked the old lady to pass him the phone. He directly called the Jiaopa. The Jiaopa, who was arranging teaching materials in the office, saw the caller ID and immediately picked up the call. Old Lee was a retired professor from the Institute of Biological Sciences. Although Old Lee studied plants and didn't have much to do with the Jiaopa's research, the teachers in the institute still respected Old Lee. Therefore, the Jiaopa didn't think much and picked up the call. Hello, Professor Xiao Jiao. Did your cat go back? Old Lee briefly told the Jiaopa about what happened at the hospital. The Jiaopa thought about it and said, I'm in the office now. I'll call and ask. Sorry to trouble you, Professor Xiao Jiao. If you have any news, please call me back. After hanging up, the Jiaopa called home. Generally speaking, when Jing Tan was at home, he would press the answer button when he saw the familiar number on the landline. However, after ringing for a long time, the other side did not pick up. Jiaopa looked at the weather outside and frowned. Then he called Jiao Wei's parents and Feng Baijin. He asked them all, but Feng Baijin said that Zheng Tan had already left. While Jiaopa and Old Man Li were looking for Zheng Tan and Little Flower, the two of them were still hiding from the rain in the grocery store. At this moment, the atmosphere in the grocery store was a little strange. The two arrogant young men were now listless. One of them was pinned to the counter by the wrist and didn't dare to move. Only his face was distorted from the pain. At first, he was still talking tough, but now he didn't even dare to fart. He could only hope that this mean-looking shop owner would quickly let them go. Just like what the shop owner said, if they wanted to let them go, they could either pay for it or get lost. On the counter, there was still the 50 yuan that the man had taken out, but the shop owner didn't look at it again after a glance. He only paid attention to the two young men who were dressed differently. The man standing at the side swallowed his saliva. He felt that the wind outside was a little cold. The wind was wet, which made him feel even colder. I'm warning you, don't go too far. The young man standing at the side raised his hand and pointed at the shop owner. However, it was obvious that his fingers were trembling. Little Flower sneezed from the rain that had splashed onto his nose. The man was so scared that he trembled again. He couldn't outsell the Samoyed when he was smiling, and he couldn't outsell Brother Ba when he pretended to be pitiful. There weren't many facial expressions on Flowery's face. For people who didn't know this type of dog, the most intimidating thing was its size. The two young men wondered if the big dog behind them was showing its impatience. When they thought about it, they became even more scared. The shop owner didn't say anything. He just looked at them with an expressionless face. Then, the young man standing at the side gritted his teeth took out 22 yuan from his pocket, and put it on the counter. Is this okay? Let my brother go. The shop owner didn't say anything, nor did he let go. Instead, he twisted the man's wrist again, which made him scream in pain. $72.30. Is your elementary school math taught by a physical education teacher? The young man standing at the side froze. He didn't expect the shop owner to be so serious about 30 cents. I don't have 30 cents left. If you don't believe me, I'll show you. As he spoke, the man rummaged through his trouser pockets and took out everything in them. There was a 10-cent coin in his left trouser pocket and 2 old 10-cent coins in his right trouser pocket. The man standing at the side choked. He didn't expect there to be 30 cents left. He put all 3 coins on the counter and looked at the shop owner. Is this okay? The shop owner shook his head and looked at the man. Last chance. Ouch. C. Hurry up and give me the money. The man whose wrist was being held shouted at his partner. The person standing next to him put another 50 yuan note on the counter with a depressed expression, and then hurriedly left with his companions. The man wanted to take the 50 on the counter, but he found that a finger was pressing down on the corner of the 50. He looked at the 50 on the counter unwillingly and snorted. He was pulled away by his partner, who took the things and walked towards the door. When he left, he wanted to find something to fight back. Even if he couldn't hit the man, he could at least hit the shop. He didn't expect to kick a shelf when he turned around. His toes hurt from the impact, and he wanted to curse. Just as he was about to curse to vent his anger and grievance, he heard 2 barks from behind. Woof! Xiaohua stood up and looked at the 2 men. He felt that something was wrong from them, so he only barked twice to test them. At the same time, he reminded them not to come over. Xiaohua looked very big when he was lying down, and when he stood up, he looked even bigger. His every move was very eye-catching. However, Zheng Tan didn't stop Xiaohua. He felt that the 2 young men didn't have the guts to come over and fight with Xiaohua. Moreover, the shop owner wasn't a simple person. He could subdue people with one move, so he definitely wasn't weak in a real fight. He was much more powerful than the 2 young men. The 2 young men choked because of Xiaohua's barks. They looked at each other and didn't want to curse anymore. They quickly left. What's going on? The man who had run to the back room to take a nap was woken up by the barks. He gathered his courage and opened the door to take a look. He raised his eyebrows when he saw the 2 men at the door. Are they looking for trouble? When the 2 men at the door saw that the shop owner had helpers, they didn't want to stay there and quickly left. They didn't even open the umbrella they just bought and ran into the rain. The man who came from the back of the shop walked around Xiaohua. He stuck to the shelf on the other side and quickly walked to the cashier. What's going on, boss? Are those 2 looking for trouble? It's nothing. They're just kids. There's no need to worry. The shop owner put the money into the money box. Only the 50 yuan bill that he took out from the counter was still in its original position. Oh, they dared to use fake money. They must be doing it on purpose. Boss, why didn't you beat them up before letting them go? Why are you arguing with kids? The shop owner moved the fake 50 yuan bill to the side of the counter and pressed it with something. Then he picked up the screwdriver and continued to repair the fan with a cigarette in his mouth. The employee had just woken up and didn't plan to go back to the back room. He dragged a chair over and sat down to watch the shop owner repair the fan. He felt that the shop owner should have taught those 2 a lesson. Those who ate, drank, and played outside all day, bullied the weak and feared the strong, should be taught a lesson. Boss, they're about the same age as me. If they're not 20, they're at least 18. They're still kids. After a pause, the employee said, Boss, what's the difference between kids and adults? Isn't it age? The shop owner's gaze didn't move from the fan. He bit the cigarette. Difference? Kids care about who can take them to eat, drink, and play. Adults care about who can lead them to success. The employee pursed his lips. He didn't agree or refute. He looked at the box at the door and said, Boss, didn't anyone say anything about your behavior of raising the price in the rain? What's there to say? The bus fare increases during the holidays. What's wrong with raising the umbrella fare when it's raining? I've learned from you what it means to take advantage of a burning house. The shop owner shook the screwdriver in his hand. I'm just letting you know more vividly what it means to be a businessman without evil intentions. Perhaps for many people, all businessmen without evil intentions was a derogatory term. However, for many businessmen, such as the shop owner himself, that wasn't necessarily the case. Zheng Tan squatted next to Xiaohua and listened to the conversation between the shop owner and the employee. He felt that the shop owner was quite interesting. "Hey boss, aren't you afraid that the cat and dog will stay here?" the employee asked. He wasn't afraid that Zheng Tan and Xiaohua would hear him at all. In his opinion, even cats and dogs that had been with people for a few years wouldn't be able to understand complicated words. The shop owner didn't say anything. Zheng Tan also pretended that he didn't hear anything. On the shelf, the white cat changed its position. It was still staring at Zheng Tan and Xiaohua from above. Even when the shop owner called it over, it didn't move. After staying in the grocery store for about an hour, the rain gradually became lighter. After another 10 minutes, it finally stopped. However, there were still a few drops of rain falling from the sky. The sky was much brighter now, but the wind was still blowing. Looking at the sky in the distance, there was probably still a storm brewing. Taking advantage of this time, he quickly went back. As soon as Zheng Tan left the grocery store, Xiaohua stood up and followed him out. After walking for a while, Zheng Tan turned back to look at the grocery store. Because the rain had stopped, the door was opened again. The situation at the cashier counter could be seen clearly from outside. The shop owner was testing the electric fan that he had just fixed. The white cat jumped down from the shelf and onto the cashier counter. The white cat looked at the shop owner with its sharp eyes. Then, it quickly used its paw to remove the cigarette in the shop owner's mouth. The shop owner hadn't stopped smoking for more than an hour. He liked to work with a cigarette in his mouth. If he didn't have a cigarette in his mouth, he would feel uncomfortable and weak. After his cigarette was removed, the shop owner wasn't angry. Instead, he choked on his laughter. Cough cough. "Hey, this cigarette can't be wasted. It's more than 10 yuan per pack." As he spoke, the shop owner quickly picked up the cigarette that had fallen on the counter and put it back in his mouth. Then, it used its paw to remove the cigarette again. "Hey, you little heartless brat." The shop owner picked up the cigarette and took a puff. Then he blew a smoke ring at the white cat. The white cat that was squatting there leaned back. It probably realized that it couldn't avoid the smoke ring while squatting, but it didn't want to move. Therefore, it raised its two paws and waved the smoke ring away. Chapter 372. When Zheng Tan and Little Flower returned to the courtyard, Depang, who was squatting on the first floor, saw them and yelled loudly. Zheng Tan was still wondering why Depang was yelling. Soon, Depang's old lady came out. "Yo, you're back. Black Charcoal Little Flower, come in." Depang's old lady opened the door and called Little Flower in. Little Flower was familiar with many people in the courtyard. When the old lady came over to pull on his collar, Little Flower did not resist. He followed the old lady's strength and walked in. Zheng Tan followed. After bringing Little Flower into the house, the old lady took out her phone and called both the Jiaopa and Old Man Li to tell them that they were safe. It turned out that when the Jiaopa knew that Zheng Tan and Little Flower did not return to the courtyard and did not know where they went, and that the weather outside was bad, he asked Depang's old lady, who stayed at home, to keep an eye on them. After receiving the news, the Jiaopa and Old Man Li were instantly relieved. Although the Jiaopa felt that with his cat's intelligence, he would not get lost or get caught in the rain, he was still a little worried when he did not see or hear from them. It was mainly because of the weather outside that he was worried. However, now that he knew that the cat and dog had returned home safely and that their fur was dry, he knew that they must have found a place to hide from the rain. If someone helped them, the Jiaopa planned to go over and thank them. After all, in that kind of weather, not everyone would take in a cat and a dog temporarily. Forget about the cat, but Little Flower's big dog was too big. Since he took it in and didn't have any bad intentions, he really should go and thank him. In the past, there were many cases of people cheating dogs and selling dog meat. A large dog like Bernard Shaw was actually a meat dog in many people's eyes. A meat dog was a dog that was raised to be eaten. The Jiaopa had seen in the newspaper that people raised or bought such large dogs at a low price. It was no wonder that Old Man Li was so anxious in the hospital. Little Flower was too kind and easily taken advantage of. If he was really sold to be eaten, where would old man Li go to cry? 2 days later, on a sunny weekend, Zheng Tan took Jiao Pa to the grocery store. When the shop owner saw Zheng Tan, he was quite surprised. He didn't expect that the cat would bring its owner to his door just because he helped it. The Jiao Pa bought some fruits and went over to express his gratitude. After chatting for a while, he left. Jiao Pa received a call from a student. Something had happened in the laboratory, so Jiao Pa could only bid farewell in a hurry. After the Jiao Pa left, the shop assistant walked over and picked a red grape from the fruit bag and put it in his mouth. "Boss, I didn't expect to get a bag of fruit just by helping a cat. These fruits aren't cheap. They're worth at least a few $dozen. This is a good deal." Sometimes, helping someone with all of one's heart might not be exchanged for sincerity. Sometimes it would just be a thank you. In this day and age, a thank you was worthless. He didn't expect that this time. He had only let a cat and a dog in to take shelter from the rain, and they had come to thank him and even brought gifts. This family valued the cat quite a lot. The shop owner also tasted a few red grapes and said, "That's why I said that if you think you can help, then help. It doesn't matter if it's a human or a cat. Cast your net wide. As long as there's a big fish, you'll earn a lot." Just by listening to the first part of the sentence, the shop assistant thought that his boss's character had improved. He didn't expect the latter part of the sentence to reveal his true nature. However, the shop assistant still nodded. The boss's words didn't sound good, but it made sense. It was a different interpretation of the phrase, "good people will be rewarded." It was a straightforward value. However, the shop assistant and the boss didn't expect that they would get more than this. After the Jiao Pa came over to express his gratitude, he told Old Li what he knew. Obviously, Old Li had the same thought as the Jiao Pa. He knew that the grocery store owner had helped them, so he bought gifts to thank him as soon as he was discharged from the hospital. In other people's eyes, it wasn't that big of a deal. Wasn't it just helping a dog? Did they have to go over to thank him? However, just like Zheng Tan's position in the Jiao family, Xiaohua's position in Old Li's heart wasn't small either. At that time, Xiaohua was still injured. If he got drenched in the rain, he would be even more injured. Therefore, Old Li took the gifts and brought Xiaohua to the grocery store. He held the shop owner's hand and thanked him solemnly. "Comrade, thank you for taking care of my Xiaohua." The shop assistant stood at the side and trembled. He felt that this old man was even more exaggerated than the university professor who came last time. What was the gift next to him? Other than fruits, there was a box of American ginseng. It looked quite high-end. The shop assistant didn't know that many people went to visit Old Li when he was in the hospital. Every person who went to visit him brought a lot of gifts. There were so many things like ginseng that Old Li and his wife couldn't finish them all. This time, they happened to come across this matter, so they brought a box over. After Old Li left, the shop assistant sighed to the shop owner again. He casually cast the net and caught 2 fish. "Boss, do you think there will be more big fish?" The shop owner snorted. "You should be content." The shop assistant didn't really think that there would be more developments. He just said it casually. Then, he happily carried the fruits to the back to wash them. He even generously picked a grape and put it in front of the white cat that was squatting on the shelf. The white cat slapped it away with its paw. After another 2 days, the people from the grocery store came again. After Xiaogua found out about this from the Jiao Pa, he wanted to use this matter to film a short film and publicize it. If people saw cats and dogs in trouble in the future, they would be able to help out. After getting the shop owner's approval, Xiaogua brought the people from the working group over. "Is my outfit okay? It's my first time being interviewed, so I'm a little nervous." The shop assistant specially wore clothes that showed off his good temperament and stood in front of the shop owner. "It's passable," the shop owner said. Compared to the shop assistant's nervousness and excitement, the shop owner looked no different from usual. This time, the shop owner didn't want to show too much of his face. The shop owner said that he wanted to show an honest and sincere feeling. The shop owner's face was really not convincing. He didn't want to show his face, so he let the shop assistant do it. However, there were some things that the shop owner had to explain. The shop owner briefly told Xiaogua what happened that day. When Xiaogua asked about the white cat on the shelf, the shop owner told him the truth. Of course, he didn't mention the increase in the price of umbrellas in the heavy rain and the two gangsters on the way. That white cat came by itself. I don't know whose it used to belong to. When it came, it was very thin. Now it's much stronger. But since it came, there are no more rats in the shop. The shop owner didn't tie it up. In the shop owner's words, it came by itself. When it wants to leave and feels that it's not good to stay here, it's up to it. Cats are all like this, little heartless. Xiaogua felt that the story of the white cat could be used to create a good image for the shop owner. As for the little heartless comment in the second half of the sentence, it was filtered out. When the shooting was almost done, Xiaogua felt that it was rare for him to come here. Even if the shop owner didn't want to shoot too much, he should at least shoot some scenes of the shop owner. So, Xiaogua asked the shop owner who was sitting calmly next to him, "Boss Huang, do you have any thoughts about this incident?" Boss Huang looked at the camera lens and said seriously, "Cast the net wide and catch more fish." Xiaogua was speechless. He should cut this part out when he went back. Xiaogua had expected to hear something about being kind to others and caring for animals, but in the end, all he got was these two sentences. He wanted to establish a good image for others and spread positive energy, not to advertise as a profiteer. 2 weeks later, Mao was alone at home. His wife took the kids to play at a friend's house and didn't allow him to follow. Mao didn't want to go with a group of women, so he stayed at home alone and let the nanny take a leave. Mao rarely had the chance to stay at home alone and surf the internet. He drank beer and ate takeout. Of course, there was a lot of cat food for black rice. Since he had nothing to do, Mao clicked on the website of Xiaogua's pet center and clicked on the section that he frequented. According to the Time, the new video was released. Mao, like many customers of the pet center and many cat friends on the internet, was very interested in the videos shot by Xiaogua's studio. Sometimes he would watch the commercials. The crude commercials made by cats and dogs could entertain him for a long time and always make him feel relaxed. In addition to the commercials, there were also some short films about life, which always made him smile. Especially when he saw those who had tough stuff at home, he couldn't help but gloat. In the last episode, it was about Xiaohua bravely saving his owner and honorably getting injured. What about this episode? Mao clicked on the latest video. It wasn't about commercials, but about what happened during the storm a few days ago. The main character was still Xiaohua. Because it was a dog from the courtyard, Mao had paid attention to it and even visited Old Li in the hospital. In this episode, it was Xiaohua again. What did this dog do this time? Recently, this big dog had been appearing on the screen a lot. In the new video, after Mao saw a scene, he was stunned. He put down the beer, moved the progress bar forward a little, and then pressed pause on a certain scene. Staring at the somewhat mean face on the screen, Mao picked up the phone and called Xiaogua. "Hello, Mr. Gua, are you free now? I have something to ask you." Xiaogua was originally distributing work with the people in the work group, but after receiving Mao's call, he put down what he was doing and walked into the lounge. "Yes, I'm free. What do you want to ask?" Since Xiaogua knew about Mao's background, he decided to suck up to him. Other than the matter about black rice, Xiaogua wouldn't refuse Mao's rare call. How could he let go of such a good opportunity to get closer to Mao? Mao asked Xiaogua about the video they had just shot, as well as the owner of the grocery store. The owner? His surname is Huang, but I don't know his full name. He didn't mention it either. He didn't want to show his face too much during the shoot, so it was basically shot by the staff. Although he didn't know why Mao wanted to ask about the store owner, Xiaogua still told Mao what he knew. His surname is Huang. "Okay, I got it. I won't bother you anymore. Mr. Gua, you can continue with your work." After hanging up, Mao turned off the computer and went out. In the grocery store, the staff had been in a good mood because of the interview. After the video was released, he went to read the comments from the netizens. His performance that day was good, and the netizens commented that he was young and handsome. This made the staff proud for a few days, and he still hadn't completely let it go. As he was thinking, he saw a young man walk in. The staff went up to him and said enthusiastically, "What would you like to order? I'll introduce you." Because after the store owner said to cast the net wide and catch more fish, the staff thought that in the future, except for those who were obviously looking for trouble, He should treat the customers better. He wanted them to feel that even if it was a small grocery store, the staff was also professional. Mao walked into the grocery store and looked around. His eyes fell on the person who was sitting at the cashier and reading the newspaper. He said to the staff, "A weasel skin." Chapter 373. The shop assistant looked at his boss and then at the customer who seemed to be looking for trouble but did not look like one. After a few more glances, the shop assistant was sure that the customer knew his boss. Since they knew each other, the shop assistant had nothing to do with it. His boss would handle the rest. Therefore, the shop assistant picked up a rag and started wiping the shelves. His ears perked up as he was interested in his boss's gossip. After the initial shock, Boss Huang smiled helplessly. He put the newspaper down and took out 2 cigarettes. He put one in his mouth and tossed the other to Mao. Mao caught the cigarette but did not smoke. It waved its hand at Boss Huang's action of lifting the lighter, indicating that it was not going to smoke for the time being. "You've stopped smoking since you have a kid. You're still a heavy smoker," Mao said as he passed the cigarette back to Boss Huang. Boss Huang was a little surprised by Mao's words. He did not expect the naughty and mischievous person to have a kid so soon. In his impression, Mao would only settle down in his 30s, and before that, he would run around and play. "There's a chair over there. Drag it over and have a seat. Don't be shy," Boss Huang said as he put the cigarette back carefully. Mao did not hold back. It dragged a chair over and sat with its legs crossed. It even took a peach from the fruit bowl on the other side of the counter to munch on it. "It's been a few years since we last met. I didn't expect you to become like this," Boss Huang said. "I didn't expect you, Boss Huang, who used to manage a big company with hundreds of people, to stay in a small shop like this. Are you down and out?" Mao chewed on the peach, and his words were not very tactful. "We didn't survive the financial crisis." Boss Huang flicked the cigarette ash and let out a long breath. "I'm really not cut out for that." From what Boss Huang said, Mao knew that Boss Huang had opened the shop in the past 1 or 2 years. The shop did not look new, so Boss Huang must have taken over someone else's shop and stayed in Chuhua City. The shop assistant continued wiping the counter in the corner with his ears perked up. "No wonder I didn't see you when I first came here. I've been coming here for the past 2 years, but I didn't see you around. After getting married and having a kid, I didn't pay much attention to other things. If it wasn't for that show, I wouldn't have thought you would come to Chuhua City. I didn't expect you to watch that show too. Of course, my family has cats too." Mao glanced at the white cat that was squatting on the high shelf and staring at them. "Hey, your cat looks pretty good." Boss Huang smiled without saying a word. The white cat had been introduced in the show, so he did not need to elaborate further. However, he did not know that Mao, who used to hate cats, would raise a cat. Boss Huang also did not expect Mao to find him in the pet show. It seemed that he was not the only one who had changed in the past 2 years. Mao had also changed a lot. In the past, this kid always wore strange clothes and dyed his hair. He looked like a hooligan or a street swindler. Now, he looked like a decent person. After all, he was a father. Mao did not ask too much about Boss Huang's old company. Even though they had not seen each other for a few years, they chatted like old friends. Mao asked why Boss Huang was kind enough to take in Xiaohua, and Boss Huang told him about it. This time, he did not explain it in an official manner like he did with Xiaohua and the others. Instead, he told him the truth. "I heard that the online show has a lot of viewers, and it costs a lot to advertise it. My little shop benefited a lot from the free advertisement. Many people who watched the show have been coming over recently." Mao nodded. "I was wondering where Xiaohua got his courage from. So, it's black coal. TSK, it wasn't in the video. Black coal? That black cat?" Boss Huang recalled and smiled. Back then, the cat was riding on the dog's back. If it wasn't for the cat, the big dog wouldn't have come in. Don't underestimate black coal. It's quite the troublemaker. Mao mentioned something about Zheng Tan. The two of them chatted until dinner time. Mao then stood up and left. Boss Huang wanted Mao to stay for dinner, but Mao declined. "I still need to prepare cat food when I get back. I'll buy some side dishes tomorrow. Let's have a drink." "Sure." Boss Huang did not reject Mao's offer. After all, it was not like Mao lacked money. After Mao left, the shop assistant threw the rag away and ran to the cashier counter. "Boss, who's that?" "An old friend." Boss Huang did not want to say much, but after a pause, he smiled and said, "I didn't expect to get so many things in one go." "That's right," the shop assistant thought. The next day, when it was almost 5 p.m., Zheng Tan was walking back from the lakeside villa. Unexpectedly, he bumped into Mao, who was carrying a bag of roast duck and a bag of cooked food. "Black Hole, where are you going? Why don't you come with me to the grocery store where you took shelter from the rain? You can get to know someone while you're there." "I'll call Professor Jiao later," said Mao. Zheng Tan thought about it and decided that it was a good idea. Since Mao would call him, he did not have to worry about being scolded. Besides, Mao mentioned the grocery store, which piqued Zheng Tan's interest, so he went with Mao. During the summer day, especially at noon, there were not many people shopping at the grocery store. Usually, there would be more people at night when the sun went down. When Zheng Tan and Mao arrived, the sun was still up, so it was still warm. There were not many people in the grocery store. The shop assistant was sitting at the side, playing with his phone while Boss Huang was still reading the newspaper at the counter. As soon as the shop assistant saw Zheng Tan, his eyes lit up. Zheng Tan could not help but stop in his tracks. He did not know why the shop assistant looked at him as if he was some R&B. Boss Huang asked the shop assistant to bring out a folding table. He cooked 2 side dishes and brought a few bottles of beer. The 3 of them and the cat made do with the food. When he saw Zheng Tan eating the same food as them, Boss Huang was curious. "Is it okay for the cat to eat like this?" "It's fine." Mao was not worried at all. After distributing the food to Zheng Tan, it added a few pieces of roast duck, a few slices of beef, and some side dishes to the counter. Zheng Tan's table was on the counter. Zheng Tan did not mind. He ate a lot for lunch and slept for the whole afternoon without moving much, so he was not hungry. He came over to see what kind of expert Boss Huang was. From what Zheng Tan knew, anyone who was close to Mao was not an ordinary person. When he thought about how Boss Huang subdued the gangster on the rainy day, he was even more curious. As he was thinking, he heard a soft sound. Zheng Tan looked up. The white cat jumped on the counter and stood half a meter away from Zheng Tan. It seemed to want to come over as if it was curious about the food in Zheng Tan's bowl. Zheng Tan pushed the disposable bowl that Mao had prepared for him closer to his chest and protected the bowl from the cat. He did not want his bowl to be stained with the cat's saliva, and Zheng Tan was still concerned about that. Zheng Tan's action was seen by the shop assistant as he was protecting his food. The white cat noticed Zheng Tan's vigilance, so it stopped approaching. Instead, it stared at Boss Huang and meowed twice. Boss Huang picked up some duck meat without sauce and put it beside the white cat's feet. The white cat sniffed it and ate it reluctantly, causing the shop assistant to pout. "You were more obedient when you first came here. Now you know how to put on airs. You're not cute at all." Boss Huang picked up another piece of duck meat and tapped the white cat's head with the other end of the chopstick. "You little heartless thing. Not mine. My black rice is very obedient. It doesn't throw a tantrum," Mao said proudly. Zheng Tan scoffed in his heart and doubted Mao's words. He wanted to listen to more gossip and find out what was so special about Boss Huang, but to his surprise, Mao did not lead the conversation in that direction at all. They only talked about the usual trivial things. Zheng Tan was so bored that he wanted to take a nap. He regretted coming here. Instead of listening to the boring gossip, he might as well go back and have some good food. After dinner, the sun had set. Some customers had just come to the shop, so the shop assistant went to deal with them. Boss Huang did not have to show up, so Mao and Boss Huang had been drinking and chatting in front of the folding table. However, they had moved the table further inside the shop so that it would not disturb the customers. Zheng Tan was taking a nap on the counter. He was too lazy to move even when the shop assistant was picking up the items at the counter. All of a sudden, Zheng Tan's ears twitched and he looked outside the shop. There was a car and a van outside. The 2 men who came out of the van were the ones who came to the shop to cause trouble when it rained the other day. When the customers saw the "I'm here to cause trouble" look on their faces, they stopped buying and quickly left. However, they did not go far. They watched from a distance and discussed whether they should call the police if a fight broke out later. Some people nearby saw the situation and joined the discussion. However, most of them were just there to watch the show. Small merchants like them did not want to provoke the gangsters. Mao and Boss Huang saw the men as well, but they did not look worried at all. Mao even sized up the newcomers with interest. He then stood up and said, "I'll go out first. You take your time." When Mao walked to the counter, he called Jing Tan out with him. Jing Tan glanced at Mao. He jumped down from the counter and walked out of the shop with Mao. Mao was still in the mood to buy a melon from a vendor who was pulling a wooden cart. He then leaned against the cart and watched the situation in the shop. Jing Tan did not go far. When he saw that Mao did not intend to leave, he jumped onto a small three-wheeled vehicle in front of the car and watched the shop. Inside the shop assistant was anxious. He wanted to call the police when he saw that the men were not friendly, but he was stopped by his boss. Boss Huang saw that the shop assistant looked like he was about to face a great enemy but did not run away, so he asked him to stay aside for a while. The shop assistant was actually very dissatisfied with Mao. Mao and his boss were like brothers when they were eating just now, but now that there was trouble, Mao turned around and ran away. Among the 9 men who came, the leader was called Brother Yu. He had a dragon tattoo on his arm, and the word Azure Dragon was beside it as if he was afraid that people would not know that it was the Azure Dragon. Brother Yu walked up to Boss Huang with his underlings. He raised his chin and asked, "Him?" "Yes, Brother Yu. That's him," said the young man whose hand was twisted by Boss Huang. Boss Huang was not in a hurry. He took out a pack of cigarettes and tapped on the cigarette box with his finger. A cigarette popped up and was caught between 2 fingers. The cigarette twirled between his fingers before it stopped. Boss Huang handed the cigarette to Brother Yu and said, "Give it a try." "Hey, who wants your lousy?" Before the lackey could finish his sentence, Brother Minyu had already taken the cigarette from Boss Huang's lighter. He even lit the cigarette and took a puff of it. "How is it? Not bad, right?" Boss Huang lit one for himself. "I heard that there's a KTV on the street. It's pretty good." "Yeah, the girls there are very hot." Brother Yu nodded and agreed. The lackey did not know what Brother Yu meant. He thought that Brother Yu had his own plans, so he did not say anything. Usually, when Brother Yu was talking, he would not let them interrupt. "This is the right time to go there," Boss Huang said. "Indeed," Brother Yu replied while smoking. The 2 lackeys who had been taken advantage of by Boss Huang before were a little anxious. The atmosphere was different from what they had imagined. The more they looked at them, the more they felt like they were old friends chatting. Didn't Brother Yu say that he did not know this person? Jing Tan also found it strange. Moreover, when Boss Huang took out the cigarette, Jing Tan had a very strange feeling. He could not tell what it was, but he just felt strange. Boss Huang chatted for a while more before he said, "All right, I won't keep you from having fun. Farewell. I won't see you out." Brother Yu turned around and left with the cigarette in his mouth. "Brother Yu?" The lackeys behind him did not understand what their boss meant. They could only follow him and leave. Seeing this, the people who had wanted to watch the show were disappointed. The onlookers also dispersed. All bark and no bite. There was nothing to see. Jing Tan was standing very close to the car. The rear window of the car was not closed after the Brother Yu entered the car. Therefore, Jing Tan could clearly hear the conversation inside. "Brother Yu, what should we do now?" asked one of the men sitting in the driver's seat. "Of course we're going to the KTV on the street. Do you even need to ask?" Brother Yu said with a tone that said, "You are all idiots." Hearing such an answer, the man choked. This was not what they had planned. Didn't they say that they were going to teach the shop owner a lesson? Another person sitting in the front passenger seat also said, "Brother Yu, are we just going to let the owner of that shabby shop go?" "The owner of a shabby shop?" Brother Yu asked. "That's..." The person in the front passenger seat also choked. What did Brother Yu mean? Was he pretending to be stupid or not to mention it? The person in the front passenger seat did not say anything. After all, he was not the one who wanted revenge this time. What was there to worry about? Brother Yu sat in the car, smoking and thinking about what kind of girl to accompany him at the KTV later. "Brother Yu, I think we should have taught that person a lesson just now. The person sitting next to Brother Yu could not help but say. He was familiar with Brother Yu, so he dared to say a lot of things. His brothers were already showing their arrogance. You want us to pretend to be weak? Just now. Brother Yu forcibly withdrew his thoughts from the girl accompanying him at the KTV and thought about the words of the person next to him. Just now? What happened just now? Something seemed to have happened just now. What was it? Brother Yu felt a headache. He raised his hand and knocked on his forehead. He waved his hand and stopped thinking about it. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Hurry up and drive. If you don't go now, the good girls will be taken away. If you find some ugly girl to accompany you, you will cry. The other people in the car. Damn, they really wanted to cry now. Chapter 374. On the way back, Zheng Tan was still trying to figure out what was going on. Hypnosis? Zheng Tan had never seen anyone hypnotized in such a way. However, there were so many people at that time. Why was Minyu the only one who seemed strange? From the beginning to the end, Boss Huang only took out a cigarette and said a few words. Zheng Tan wondered if there was something wrong with the cigarette. Maybe it was some kind of drug or something, but the cigarette was no different from the one Boss Huang smoked during lunch. As Zheng Tan was thinking, he heard Air Mao say, "Black Coal, do you know why that guy's nickname is Weasel?" They entered the school from the side entrance, and it took them about 10 minutes to walk to the eastern courtyard. At that time, there were not many people on the path, so no one heard what Air Mao said. Zheng Tan looked at Air Mao and perked up his ears. His name is Huang Shu. According to folklore, Weasel has the ability to confuse people. Of course, that guy might not be as evil as those folktales said. He only knew some tricks passed down from his ancestors. Because he had fooled many people, and his name sounded very similar to Yellow Weasel, everyone called him Weasel. Many people know who the person nicknamed Weasel is, but they don't know his real name. Nicknames are much more famous than names. Little tricks? Zheng Tan was quite interested in that person's little tricks. It can be considered a relatively special kind of hypnotism. Perhaps it also involves some spiritualism. It's a kind of derivative trick that was once popular in the era of theocracy. Using your cat dad's scientific explanation, it should belong to the category of neuroscience. Of course, with current science and technology, some things are difficult to explain. Some people used to call these tricks heretical or even evil, but we call them folk arts. Every kind of skill that has been passed down for hundreds and thousands of years has its own reason and value. But don't be afraid. Usually, he wouldn't use that kind of trick, especially on people. He rarely used it when he was doing business back then. Of course, tonight's situation is an exception. Also, I told him not to use that kind of trick on you. While Air Mao was talking about Boss Huang, Zheng Tan was thinking, even if Boss Huang is a hypnotist, he might be able to hypnotize humans, but can he hypnotize cats, dogs, and even rats? If he had that kind of ability, why would he stay in a small grocery store? However, Zheng Tan had seen a lot of people with weird tempers. Just like Air Mao, who didn't live in a high-end elevator house or buy a villa, but chose to rent an apartment in a courtyard in the Eastern District and lived in a small place of about 70 square meters. Everyone had their own ideas. Zheng Tan couldn't figure out the thoughts of those weirdos with his own way of thinking. Being able to see Boss Huang's special side made Zheng Tan's afternoon trip worthwhile. The next day, Zheng Tan went to the grocery store again. Initially, Zheng Tan wanted to observe Boss Huang's little tricks more, but he was more curious than afraid about the hypnotic tricks that Air Mao mentioned. When the shop assistant saw Zheng Tan again, he even greeted him with a smile. The shop assistant was still a little dizzy after what had happened last night. He didn't know why those people had come in such a rage and left after saying a few words to the boss. He had asked the boss about it, but the boss had only replied, probably because they were bored and had nothing better to do. The shop assistant couldn't sleep in the middle of the night and kept thinking about what happened last night. He suddenly realized that Air Mao might have expected something like that, so he went out to watch calmly. It seemed like Boss Huang had a lot of secrets. Young people were always curious, but Boss Huang had no intention of telling him anything. When Zheng Tan arrived, there was no one in the store. The shop assistant was playing poker with Boss Huang out of boredom. It was the simplest kind of poker game. Whoever drew the most points would win in 5 rounds, and the loser would be responsible for cleaning the store for the day. Zheng Tan jumped up and took a look. On the paper that recorded the results, the shop assistant had lost from the beginning to the end. Every time, it was a best-of-5 format. Even if the shop assistant won 2 rounds in a row, he still couldn't win. Zheng Tan believed that this kind of simple game should be based on probability, right? However, the shop assistant didn't win even once. Later on, Rack 1 was marked to Rack 6, which meant that the shop assistant had to clean Rack 1 to Rack 6 alone for the day. The game was still going on, but the shop assistant's bad luck didn't turn for the better. No, boss, shuffle the cards again, said the shop assistant. He was the one who shuffled the cards just now, but he lost from the beginning to the end. This time, it was Boss Huang's turn to shuffle the cards. He had seen Boss Huang shuffle the cards before, and his shuffling skills were terrible. After Boss Huang shuffled the cards, his luck should be better, right? Boss Huang didn't care. He picked up the cards and shuffled them. Zheng Tan had seen Air Mao play poker before. Back then, Air Mao used to play fancy cards on the street to fool the female students. Since this person knew Air Mao, he must be a capable person. Based on his results just now, Zheng Tan had a feeling that this person was the same as Air Mao. Sure. Boss Huang didn't care. He took the cards and shuffled them. His shuffling skills were terrible. He was like a kindergarten kid. When he shuffled the cards, Zheng Tan clearly saw a king of spades at the bottom. Zheng Tan could see it, and so could the shop assistant. Therefore, after Boss Huang shuffled the cards in such a childish way, the shop assistant said that he would pick first. Sure, Boss Huang answered as if he didn't care. As expected, the shop assistant picked the card at the bottom and flipped it over with a grin. Then his smile froze. He thought it was a king of spades, but it turned out to be a 3 of hearts. Boss Huang simply picked a king of spades from the middle. This isn't right, boss. How did this happen? I saw a king of spades at the bottom. How did it turn into a 3 of hearts? The shop assistant was puzzled. Boss Huang chuckled and wrote, "Shelf 7, on the notebook beside him. He then said, "Eyes can also lie." You cheated. The shop assistant complained. I'm talking about evidence. If you don't have evidence, don't spout nonsense. This is called being a sore loser, Boss Huang pointed out as if he was an experienced person. I'm not playing anymore. This is too much. The shop assistant put away the cards and planned to buy some lunch. If this continued, he would die of exhaustion from losing. The shop might not be big, but it was tiring to clean all the shelves alone. It was summer, and every little movement would make him sweat. It was almost time, so Zheng Tan went to Feng Baijin's place to eat. After Zheng Tan left, Boss Huang went through the morning's income. When he saw the white cat jump on the counter again, Boss Huang stared at the greasy spot on its body and took out a 1 yuan coin. The white cat thought Boss Huang wanted to play with it, so it walked over. Boss Huang put the 1 yuan coin on the counter and moved it to the white cat. He held the coin vertically and flicked the edge of the coin, causing it to spin. The white cat lowered its head and looked at the spinning coin. Its tail, which had been wagging, slowly stopped moving. Boss Huang took out a square handkerchief and wet it with water. He then wiped the greasy spot on the white cat's head. The greasy spot must have been accidentally left on the white cat during breakfast. White fur was always like that, so the slightest stain was very obvious. Other than wiping the greasy spot, Boss Huang also gently wiped the white cat's ears. Usually, the white cat would sit on the shelves, and the shelves would only be cleaned once a week or a few weeks. The grocery store by the roadside was like that. There was a lot of dust outside, and the airflow caused by the passing cars would cause a layer of dust to fall on the shelves if they were not cleaned. The white cat often slept on the shelves, so its body was covered in dust. Boss Huang could not bathe it every day, so he had to wipe it every few days. However, the white cat refused to cooperate. When he wiped its fur and ears, it resisted like its life was in danger. Therefore, Boss Huang often resorted to other methods, such as the current situation. After wiping the cat's ears, Boss Huang casually flipped the white cat's fur. He saw the cat carrying a fat rat in its mouth, so he wondered if it was infected with fleas. Cats had to be stroked, and flipping their fur would make them feel uncomfortable. Many cats would resist, including the white cat, but it did not move at all, allowing Boss Huang to do whatever he wanted. After flipping the cat's fur and finding no fleas, Boss Huang was relieved. He did not plan to bathe the cat or buy flea medicine. Putting the towel down, Boss Huang raised his finger and flicked the white cat's nose. The white cat shuddered as if it was awakened. It looked at Boss Huang and the coin beside its paw. It raised its paw and played with the coin, as if it had no idea what had just happened. Looking at the white cat playing with the coin nonchalantly, Boss Huang thought of the black cat that came in the morning. Was the black cat a male or a female? Mao didn't say anything about it, did it? Boss Huang pondered. The white cat in his shop was a female, and the black cat kept coming over. If it was a male, did it have its eyes on the white cat in his shop? He was not sure. The black cat walked with its tail hanging down, so Boss Huang was not sure if it was a male or a female. Boss Huang thought that if he saw the black cat again, he would have to see if it was a male or a female. Even though Mao told him not to play any tricks on the cat, he just wanted to see if it was a male or a female. It would not hurt the cat anyway. Boss Huang picked up the coin that was almost pushed out of the counter by the white cat. He fiddled with the coin in his hand and stopped reading the newspaper. After lunch, he kept an eye on the outside of his shop to see if the black cat would come again. Zheng Tan had lunch at Feng Baijin's shop. He watched Feng Baijin play a new game before he jumped on a willow tree by the lake to take a nap before he went back to his shop. Initially, Zheng Tan did not plan to enter the grocery store. He was just passing by, but Boss Huang, who had been keeping an eye on the outside, suddenly called out to Zheng Tan. Cole, come here. Boss Huang waved at him. Zheng Tan was speechless. Did this guy learn this from Mao? But it was even worse than Mao. Even the word, black, was omitted. Zheng Tan had no idea what Boss Huang wanted, but he still walked over. Boss Huang tapped on the counter. Come on, Cole. Let's play a game. Boss Huang then took out a hemp rope and dangled it beside the counter. He played with it a little since he usually used it to tease the cat. Zheng Tan looked at Boss Huang as if he was looking at an idiot. He did not touch the hemp rope. Instead, he jumped on top of the counter to see what Boss Huang wanted. When Zheng Tan jumped on top of the counter, Boss Huang did not care why Zheng Tan did not play with the hemp rope. He took out the coin from earlier and flicked it like how he did with the white cat. When the black cat in front of him looked at the coin without moving its tail, Boss Huang thought it was enough. He wanted to grab Zheng Tan's tail to see if it was a male or a female. However, the moment his hand touched the tail, his eyelids twitched. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. A black figure flashed in front of him and he only managed to raise his hand to block it. However, he failed to block Zheng Tan's kick. Boss Huang almost fell off his chair after the kick to his face. He did not care about the pain on his face as he was shocked. It's ineffective. Chapter 375. After Zheng Tan kicked Boss Huang, he stood at the counter and looked at the man who almost fell off his chair. Although Mao had told Boss Huang not to use such tricks on Zheng Tan had always been wary of people with special abilities like Boss Huang. He was not familiar with Boss Huang. The first time they met was because of the weather. Boss Huang had let them in to take shelter from the rain, and Zheng Tan had thanked him for that. However, ever since he found out that Boss Huang was close to Mao, he knew that Boss Huang was not an honest person. Otherwise, Boss Huang would not have been able to hang out with Mao. There was a saying that birds of a feather flock together. Therefore, even though Zheng Tan knew that Boss Huang did not have any malicious intentions, he was still vigilant to prevent pranks from happening. He did not expect it to happen now. When Boss Huang took out the coin, Zheng Tan had a strange feeling. It was the same feeling he had when Boss Huang played with you that night, so Zheng Tan was on guard. Boss Huang thought that Zheng Tan lowered his head and did not move because Zheng Tan was observing the coin to see if it was different from a normal coin. As for Zheng Tan's tail, it was because he was not a real cat. Other than moving his tail when he was thinking about something or when he was excited, his habits were different from other cats. Since Boss Huang treated Zheng Tan like a normal cat, he was not very cautious around Zheng Tan. On top of that, he had misjudged the strength of Zheng Tan's kick and even tried to grab the cat's tail like a naughty child. He had a death wish and because of that he was kicked. Zheng Tan looked at the shocked Boss Huang. He raised his hand and stepped on the coin that was lying flat on the counter. He then flicked it with all his might. The coin flew out and hit the wall behind the counter with a crisp ding. It then rebounded and fell on Boss Huang's head, sliding down his hair. Boss Huang caught the coin. After all, he was a person with experience, so he quickly calmed down. Other than the shock from earlier, he was now more curious. Why did it not work? He was very familiar with the tricks he used on small animals such as cats and dogs. He had never encountered such a situation before. Boss Huang was kicked in the face earlier. Fortunately, he dodged in time and blocked some of the force with his hand, so his nose was not hit. Otherwise, he would be bleeding right now. It seemed that this cat was quite strong. No wonder Mao said not to provoke it. Boss Huang got up and walked to a shelf where there were mirrors of different sizes. He picked one up and looked at it to check the injuries on his face. Since it was not a big problem, he did not bother about it anymore. The minor injuries on his face would heal in no time. Zheng Tan had been paying attention to Boss Huang's movements. From the moment the man walked to the shelf, picked up the mirror, walked to the side to get the cup, and poured the tea leaves into the cup, Zheng Tan had a strange feeling at least 3 times. The first time, Boss Huang even turned around to look at Zheng Tan for a few seconds. The second time, he only glanced at Zheng Tan twice. The third time, he did not look at him, but he did pay attention to Zheng Tan from the corner of his eyes. After that, Zheng Tan did not feel it anymore. Seeing that it was almost time, he left the grocery store and went home. After dinner, Mao went to the grocery store to chat with Boss Huang. Boss Huang told him about Zheng Tan's incident that day. "Didn't I tell you not to provoke that cat for no reason?" Mao frowned. "I just thought of it on the spur of the moment. I didn't plan to do anything to it. I just wanted to see if it was a male or a female, but I didn't expect to get kicked." Boss Huang sighed. "Speaking of which, that cat is really weird." Mao knew what was going on in Boss Huang's mind. Boss Huang had inherited some folk skills from his ancestors, and he had never failed to use them. Today, however, Zheng Tan had given him a hard time. Boss Huang's senses were very sharp. Wherever his target's attention was, he would strike from there. It was impossible to guard against it. Be it humans, cats, or other animals, they had all fallen for his tricks before. Zheng Tan's behavior today was undoubtedly a slap to Boss Huang's face. Of course, Boss Huang was not a petty person who would seek revenge for the slightest grievance. If he could not take down Tang Ling, it was either because his skills were not up to par, or his tricks were useless against Tang Ling. If it was the former, it would take a long time for him to improve his skills, and he would not be able to succeed in a short period of time. As for the latter, it was not up to Boss Huang to decide. No matter how hard he tried, it would be futile because Tang Ling was absolutely immune to it. Boss Huang was glad that it was just a cat and not a human that had a grudge against him. Since he had thought it through, he stopped testing Zheng Tan after a few more attempts, and Zheng Tan did not feel that weird feeling anymore. "Sometimes, I really feel that the cat isn't a cat. It just looks like one. I'm not superstitious." Using the academic explanation from those old guys who study spiritualism, I think it's a supernatural phenomenon. "What do you think?" Mao asked. Boss Huang shrugged and lit a cigarette. He took a few puffs and said, "Nothing. No matter how supernatural it is, I'll just take a look at it. I'm too lazy to study it. I still have to stock up on supplies." Mao chuckled and recalled for a while. "Back then, when I first met that guy, I stuck a talisman on his head." "Ahem." Boss Huang choked on Mao's words. "And then? I almost ruined his handsome face." Every time Mao recalled the incident, he would think that he was an idiot. Fortunately, he covered his head with his jacket, so he did not fall for it. Boss Huang chuckled. He felt better after that. For the next few days, Zheng Tan did not go to Mao's shop. He only bumped into Mao when he was strolling around the campus and listened to it talk. Mao said that Boss Huang's tricks did not work on Zheng Tan. Although Zheng Tan believed it, he could not help but wonder why Boss Huang's tricks worked on other animals but not him. Mao and the others did not fall for the trick because they had their own capabilities. As for Zheng Tan, he knew himself very well. Among all the explanations that he could think of, the most likely one was his biggest secret. After all, He was not a real cat and he was not a real human. Whether it was the tricks used on humans or animals, none of them worked on Jing Tan. After hearing what Air Mao said, Jing Tan noticed that Air Mao's expression was the same as usual. The next day, he went to the grocery store to check on Air Mao. Boss Huang was not surprised either. His reaction was normal. Jing Tan heaved a sigh of relief. After the summer break, it was the start of the new semester. Every year during the new semester, Boss Huang could earn a huge sum of money. For him, the most important thing now was to ensure that he had enough stock. He would not have the time to go to the grocery store. With his experience from last year, Boss Huang knew how much stock he needed and what kind of goods he needed. As for other matters, he was too lazy to care. In his words, he would be an idiot if he did not earn the money. After all, the stores nearby were busy with the new semester. Boss Huang had a second-hand pickup truck. As a hybrid between a sedan and a truck, it was very practical for him to use both passenger and cargo vehicles. Air Mao had nothing to do at home. His wife was at home taking care of the kids and he had a nanny around, so he was usually quite free. After knowing that Boss Huang was going to the grocery store, Air Mao wanted to go out with him. When Air Mao and Boss Huang talked about it, Jing Tan was listening beside them. Air Mao wanted to go with Boss Huang to get some fresh air and he also wanted to follow Boss Huang to see some folk artists that Boss Huang knew. Are there a lot of folk artists out there? Jing Tan rarely left the area. Even if he did go out, he would just look at the scenery outside through the car window. He would not pay attention to other things. His understanding of many places only existed on the internet and maps. Even though he had lived in Chuhua City for 6 years, the places he went to were limited. When he first came to the east side courtyard, Jing Tan even followed the delivery truck from Dongyuan supermarket for fun. After the delivery truck was replaced, he did not follow the truck anymore. The new driver was too sneaky, so Jing Tan did not trust him very much. Air Mao told Boss Huang about going with him to the grocery store. He looked at Jing Tan beside him and asked if Jing Tan wanted to go with him. Of course, Jing Tan wanted to go, but he still had to inform the Jiao Pa and leave the task to Air Mao. The Jiao Pa did not object. It was not Jing Tan's first time doing something like this. He only had one request for Jing Tan: don't cause trouble. It seemed that in many people's eyes, Jing Tan was a troublemaker who would run into trouble wherever he went. No one knew if it was because of Jing Tan that so many things happened to Jing Tan or because it was a coincidence. Either way, the Jiao family was worried about this. The Jiao Pa had met the grocery store's owner once, and now that Jing Tan wanted to go with Boss Huang again, he went to the grocery store to pay him a visit. From what the Jiao Pa knew about Jing Tan, he knew that if there was a first time, there would be a second time, a third time, and so on. Maybe in the future, every time Boss Huang went to the grocery store, his cat would go with him. He had to admit that the Jiao Pa knew Jing Tan very well. On this day, Air Mao went to the 5th floor to look for Jing Tan, and they went to the grocery store together. When they arrived, Boss Huang was helping them look at the list. On the list were the types and quantities of goods that Boss Huang and his staff had sorted out. They had checked the list yesterday, so they would go through it again before they left. Mattress, mat, electric fan, flashlight, cloth closet, shoe rack, hook, bed table. Boss Huang went through the list one by one. The list was quite long, so Air Mao did not disturb him. Okay, that's all. Boss Huang folded the list and put it in his pocket. He then called Air Mao and Jing Tan to get into the car. The pickup truck had 2 seats. Air Mao sat in the front passenger seat while Jing Tan sat in the back. They could relax a little when they went out, but when they came back, the back seat would be full of goods. Life is like a book from heaven. Hey, where do I start? The soul doesn't know where to go, where is the way home? Boss Huang loved to sing when he was driving, but Jing Tan had never heard the song before. He thought it sounded weird. However, compared to General, it was still bearable. Old Huang, change to something more exciting. This song makes me uncomfortable, said Air Mao. Boss Huang thought about it and continued singing. The river flows to the east, the stars in the sky. That shivers. Jing Tan and Air Mao were at a loss for words. In the shop, the white cat sat on the shelf. It had no intention of following Boss Huang since it did not go out much. It watched as Boss Huang got into the car and followed it closely. It only turned around when it could no longer see Boss Huang. After Boss Huang left, it glanced at the staff member who sat in the boss seat obediently. The white cat then threw the thing beside its paw at the staff member. The staff member who was sitting in the cashier's chair with his legs crossed and was about to read the newspaper when he saw something black fall and hit the newspaper. F*CK,